This week, London Reel presents Adam Scorgie, the producer of The Union, the business of getting high.
Stop. Watch The Union, then we'll have a rational discussion. But don't argue with me until you've learned some facts.
Marijuana is just a weed, and marijuana is worth more ounce for ounce than gold.
You're the pot guys, right? We did a pot film, right, that was thought-provoking and entertaining, but that doesn't make us pot guys.
Now he brings you the culture high.
Things don't add up, they don't work. We can't just keep banging our head against a brick wall and expecting it to change. We have to start looking at alternative models. What those are, who knows?
The Culture High is the documentary that will tear into the very fiber of the longest fought war of our time.
This Sunday, London Reel presents Adam Scorgie, the culture high.
The only thing that really seems to make sense is that none of this makes any sense.
I am here at the Tower of London, specifically the middle tower that was built in 1280. And if you were rolling up in here, you were about to have either a really good day or a really bad day, depending if you might have been married to Henry VIII. It's a beautiful place here. It's a sunny day. I've got Tower of London over here. I've got Tower Bridge behind me. And you'll be seeing the Shard and also the HMS Belfast. I figure it's always good to go on location, show you a bit of the beautiful city that I am lucky enough to live in. This week on the show, we have Mr. Adam Scorgie, and Adam now rings in with the longest London Reel episode, only a few minutes past Mr. Howard Marks, which is quite fitting because he interviewed Howard while he was in town filming The Culture High. And The Culture High is the movie that is the follow-on to his first film he made, I think in 2007, which was called The Union, the business behind getting high. And it's a film that he made when he went back to Canada after pursuing acting in New York City. And he looked around and his buddies had like Harley Davidsons and boats and houses after a couple years, and he was like, what's going on? And his buddies would say, oh, he's in the Union, which was slang for he's in the marijuana business. And so Adam made this movie. Originally it was going to kind of be about him, but then he took himself out of the equation and just narrated the film, and literally it blew up online. He had Joe Rogan speaking for one of the first times. I think he was on film in a public way talking about weed and everything else, and he's had tons of amounts of success with The Union, and he following it up now with a movie called The Culture High, and I think it's looking deeper in to how this entire war on drugs and this kind of duality we have as people, whether we want to ban substances yet we want to use them, and I think he's looking at kind of a real macro view of how it's affected our culture. And he had a lot to say. It was a fantastic interview, and he's a very interesting dude. So I think you're really going to enjoy Adam and his interview. As you probably know, we are sponsored by the folks at X-Brain, and I have been busy consuming massive amounts of their new product, which is the Way Better protein powder. It's grass-fed, comes from free-range cows, no hormones, and I'm really liking it. It sits in my stomach nice. If you've had whey before, some of it's good and some of it's garbage. Some of it has a lot of sugar in it, and Way Better is sweetened with stevia, and I'm a big fan. I'm on the banana now, and I liken that in the vanilla, and I'm working my way through the flavors. So if you want to check that out, they've offered 15% off just to London Reel people. If you click on the link below or go to xbrain.co.uk, then you can get 15% off. Use the code LondonReel at checkout. And yeah, you know, they've got a bunch of other products as well. We'll be talking more about X-Brain. They're one of the people that make this show possible. So I'm always looking to shout out to them and support them if you are feeling it. Now behind me I've got Tower Bridge. A lot of people confuse Tower Bridge with London Bridge. Now this one, even though it looks really old, was built kind of in the late 1800s. You would have seen it on the Sherlock Holmes movie. And the deal is that London Bridge is the one down on the other end that I think actually was taken piece by piece to Arizona. Only the Yanks would do that, and it's an ugly-ass bridge. There's nothing going on at London Bridge. So if you want to impress people when they come to town, you always show them Tower Bridge. And behind me over here on my upper right-hand corner is the HMS Belfast, and this is an old-school World War II ship that was responsible for sinking some of the first U-boats, which were the German submarines. And you can actually spend the night there, I think. And you can see the Shard in the background. That's the tallest building in Western Europe. London's just going up, up, up right now. So it's pretty crazy. Other than that, we've got Bruce Perry from Tribe coming next week. We had a great sit down with him. I don't think he spoke to the media in like 2 years, so it was really cool talking to him. He's familiar with so many London Real topics, whether it comes to consciousness exploration or just trying to figure out why he does the things he does. So I really think you're going to enjoy him. And then we've got Annie Michon, who is a former MI5 agent turned whistleblower. She's got a lot of really good insights, a very smart lady, and she was also interviewed for the Culture High, along with other former guests of London Real, like Professor David Nutt. And obviously me and Adam are on the same page when it comes to a lot of things, because we seem to have weaved a lot of the same people like into our projects. My final sponsor, as you probably know, are the folks at Bulletproof. And yes, I've just had my Bulletproof coffee for the morning. I'm loving it. I use a grass-fed ghee, which is a clarified butter, and now I have the brain octane oil, which is I think got 15 times the amount of quality MCT that coconut oil has. You can get those from the Bulletproof exec. You can go to upgradedself.com, or if you're in the UK and Europe, you can go to the folks at Xbrain. Yep, they're always hooking it up. And I love this stuff, man. I tell everybody, if you want to drop 10 pounds, just Bulletproof. It's just that simple. It's hard for people to believe, but you make this coffee that's ultimately almost free of molds and toxins. You add this high quality butter and then these high quality oils, and that's like your breakfast supplement for the morning, and makes me feel good. I don't crave sweets. I don't even want coffee later in the day. I don't know, it's crazy. So get yourself Bulletproofed. Check those guys out. If you want to know more about their science, go to bulletproofexec.com. They got a whole new launch coming soon. They got some charcoal pills, which I'm waiting for. I'm really excited about those. So there you go. I'm gonna wrap this thing up and give you Tower Bridge in the background, walking through some tourists, etc. here. And that's it. We've got Mr. Jared Diamond on the show next week. If you're a guy, and maybe a guy that's old like me, then you probably read his book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. I wouldn't say that book changed my life, but it came close to it. It's just an amazing perspective on us as humans, and I can't wait to sit down with Jared. I think he's in his 80s, and it's going to be a real treat to finally meet him. I think even my dad, Freeman Rose, is going to be jealous I get to meet Jared. So I'm pumped for that. Thank you guys for your support. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. You know the deal. We're always looking for help. Brian at londonreal.tv. You can send me an email. We need Final Cut editors that know multicam. We know anyone who wants to help us book guests if you're in PR or whatever. Anyways, it's all good. Share the love. If you're feeling this, share this out to your friends. I think people are going to love Mr. Adam Scorgie. So check him out. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. We are sponsored today by Bulletproof Coffee. Thank you very much to Dave Asprey. He is the Bulletproof exec. It is the official drink of London Real. We are also sponsored by the guys at Xbrain. They have a new whey protein powder that's grass-fed, hormone-free, organic, all the good stuff. And you can check that out at xbrain.co.uk. And we're now giving discounts to London Real fans. If you use the code London Real, you get 15% off. So check that out. I'm very excited for today's show. My co-host today is entrepreneur Colin Pyle, who comes to London from Toronto, and a fellow Canadian in the house. Oh, yeah. He has been through China and India, usually for 2-month sprints, roughly, yeah. Riding motorcycles, getting world records. You're on the Travel Channel recently with the Middle Kingdom ride, right? Yep. And hopefully the India ride's coming out soon, right? End of the year, probably, yeah. Okay, awesome. You're also the co-host on our new hit series, I love saying that, called Silicon Reel. Just been picked up for the second season by ourselves. And it highlights the people of the London technology scene. We're actually in the very center of what they call Silicon Roundabout, which is like Silicon Valley of London. And there's all sorts of cool, exciting stuff going on. So we kind of have like a mini London Reel every week with like tech guys. It's a lot of fun. Yes, so that's awesome. There you go. But well, you, Mr. Humble over here, I didn't know that you'd like got world records and shit as we're talking earlier. Yeah, it's a Canadian humbleness, yeah. Or maybe not. I don't know. Well, here, let's get to it. Our guest today is Mr. Adam Scorgie, who is an independent filmmaker whose documentaries include The Union, The Business of Getting High, I Am Bruce Lee, and The Good Son. He is in London to film his follow-up to The Union called The Culture High, which further investigates how the modern-day prohibition of marijuana has a grasp on our society as a whole. Welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm pumped to be here.
Dude, it's so cool to have you. Did I do that justice as far as describing the culture high, describing you?
You did it excellent, actually, describing the culture. That was a really, it's tough to say in a one line, like what we're trying to do, right? So usually people ask, like, well, what are you doing that you didn't put in the union? We're like, because we didn't want to do another drug film. Because just like everything else with that industry, that was our first film. So we got stereotyped as activists or hippies. People were like, oh, you're the pot guys. We're like, we did a pot film, right? That was thought-provoking and entertaining, but that doesn't make us pot guys. Not to say like I love the audience and stuff that we have, because they're some of the most loyal audience, like we were talking before. It's kind of like having the gay community behind you. I mean, they are so supportive, and I wouldn't have a career without them. But it was tough when I was going back into the industry to get looked at as just a filmmaker. Right, even though people would be like, oh yeah, you did that film that was very like, and they'd say the one that only showed the positives or whatever. I'm like, no, everything there is fact-based. We were invited to Parliament Hill to help educate senators and MPs on cannabis prohibition. It was bought by over 25 universities to teach as part of the sociology curriculum and criminology and everything else. So go try to fact check us and find something that's wrong. And then people are like, whoa, sorry, I didn't know you. I'm like, we're professional filmmakers. I hate, but that goes with the whole argument, is that it's always been the way politicians stuff have dealt with that argument, is they throw in a slang or something to separate those people from the common people. They're like, well, if these burnouts want to smoke this stuff in their own time, by saying that, it's a clever move by a politician, because then we're not the same people. They're like, oh, well, they're burnouts and I'm not, right? Like they're a separate group that I am, although we're not. We're all the same, right? Like they just have a different thought on one item.
I think it's called ad hominem, when you actually attack the person and dismiss the person, even though the ideas hold weight. And they're just like, oh, it's just the potheads, or it's just the drug guys.
Stoners or hippies or whatever. They use derogatory terms to separate them from another group, right? So it's interesting, but then just people wanted another one so bad. Like just the fans were always like, you got to do another one. There's so much going on. You got to do another one. And, me and the director, Brett, looked at that and we're like, man, the people really want something else. And then we went back to the market and we got pre-sales from everybody that liked everyone that had the first film had success with it. Super Channel, Phase 4 Films, Eagle Entertainment in Australia. They're like, yeah, we'll take another one of that. It was great because it was my first film. So most of them, like Phase 4, it's funny because my sales agent jokes that he still owes Phase 4 a favor because he took it. He said, oh, I don't see this having any commercial success. I don't think anybody's interested in this. It's just a documentary. And then Nolan's like, please, man, this is a good buddy of mine. He's, borrowed all this money from his family. Like, and you need shelf space. He just bought out Peace Arch at the time and he needed content for shelves to like put package deals together. So he's like, fine, I have the original email of the president saying, I don't see this having any commercial success, but hopefully you can prove me wrong. And now it's been the most successful documentary they've ever carried.
So people that don't know, what was the union? If you had to describe it in like a minute.
The union looks at the business behind prohibition and what drives it. And the interesting thing about the union is that we went into it totally not knowing a fucking thing about the industry. Like, we were just in BC. It was in the news all the time. Grow up us, grow up us. I had a lot of friends when I came back from New York that were now hugely successful, that had been growing weed. Right, and that's how the name The Union came, is that was kind of the code name. I'd be like, dude, what the fuck is he doing? He's got a new truck, a new house, a boat, Harley? Fuck, I've only been gone for 2 years. And they're like, oh, dude, he's in the union. I'm like, which union? They pay really good. And he's like, he grows dope, man. And I was like, oh, fuck, that's a good business. And I actually looked at getting into it, into the grow business, because I was going to acting school and film school in New York, and all actors and filmmakers are broke. As you know, your fellow filmmaker. Well, no, you went through finance first. But I was broke, so I was like, I could be one of the guys that buys a house. I could be the top of the pyramid, rent it out to a grower, and collect cash every 2 to 3 months, and then just go back to New York and put into my career. But then, like, my father just passed away, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. So I felt him looking down on me, and I'd never broken the law like that before. So I was like, why didn't I do a movie about it? Why didn't I take what I've learned in New York and go into this? So we originally just went into the union wanting to look at an expose of this industry, because when I looked at getting into it, I'd learned that there's real estate agents that'll help you find a house that is perfectly a bi-level suite that you can splice the power. And then, well, what if the cash, what do you do? Don't worry. We got guys that'll hide the cash for you and set up LTD companies and put it in a way that there's certain place. And we got car dealerships that'll take cash payments, so you can just buy a truck outright. And you can go, there's this whole business around supporting people that were doing it.
And a whole economy that makes money.
So I was like, man, that's fascinating. I'm going to look into that, right? I'm going to do a film about that, because that's something I'd be interested in watching. But then as you go into it and you start interviewing like the former police chief of Seattle and Dr. Lester Grinspoon and all these people, and you look at how these policies came to be and how these things are where they are today and the influence the United States has on Canada, the film grew into something so much bigger. And as we kept learning these things, like as you should with a doc, real journalists, we're like, really? Nobody's ever died directly from pot? That has to be a mistake. That has to be some hippie comment. Let's take a look, right? And then you start looking, you're like, no, Surgeon General reports have no direct deaths from cannabis use. Like, not to say you didn't get high and there's been people drive into a tree, but there's a lot of other components in there. That's you getting into your car, but directly attributed to overdose of cannabis. So then we're like, man, I thought I was smart. I felt pretty dumb once we got in there. We didn't know anything. We're like, well, let's put this into the film. And then the film is now grown into this cult classic where it's kind of the go-to doc when people start arguing about the cannabis situation. People are like, oh, stop. Watch The Union, then we'll have a rational discussion. But don't argue with me until you've learned some facts, right? Which is amazing. We never, ever, ever thought getting into it that it'd become this piece it has today.
And the Canadian Parliament requested to have it played.
Because they had so many people emailing them. And they actually pay attention. Like when you go, what they don't pay attention to is ballots where you just get signatures or online things. That shit means nothing to them. But if you take the time to write a letter, they equate that to being worth, we had the breakdown from the MP's junior guy saying that he's like, we equate that to being worth 500 people because there's probably 500 people who feel exactly the same way, but they won't take the time to write us. And he's like, we received hundreds and hundreds of letters about your movie, quoting your movie, like stats, this, you need to watch it, you need to look, this is what's in it. So finally, justice critic Irwin Cotler, who used to be the attorney general under, which prime minister? I want to say Trudeau, or Chrétien. They invited us and said, fuck, just have these guys here. Let's screen it. We'll get senators and MPs to take a look. We have so many people asking. An interesting story with Irwin Cotler, the justice critic. When Chrétien was in, right before Chrétien left his term, he tried to put in a bill to decriminalize or legalize marijuana. And Irwin Cotler's son, or Irwin Cotler forwarded with him, was trying to push the bill through, but Chrétien was on his way out, so it lost all power and it sank. But Irwin Cotler's son got really pissed at him. And he was like, Dad, I can't believe that you helped try to push this through. He's like, haven't you seen what marijuana does? Like, it kills people. It's a gateway drug. It's this. It ruins brain cells. And Irwin's like, I don't think it really does all that. I think, and we're looking at different... And he was really mad at his dad. And then when the new one came that they were when they were looking at revamping the policy, they're going to have a discussion in Canada. And then he looked at doing this. It was his son that said, Dad... He's like, what, are you mad at me again? Because now I'm re-looking at the marijuana situation. He's like, no, actually, I've totally changed my mind. I watched this documentary called The Union. He's like, you need to, and he's like, we keep getting emails about this thing. You are now talking about it. He's like, no, that totally changed my perspective. I have a whole new outlook on it now, which, when we finished the film, we thought that it could help educate people. But you never like to think that our film will be the one that'll change minds, right? Like we thought deep down, we're like, it might change a few minds, might get people to open, at least go look for more knowledge on it. And then to hear that from some of the country's leaders, that he pulled us aside the screen. He's like, your movie is what changed my son's point of view. He was mad at me. And now he was like, you have to watch this movie. And he's like, I'm just going to invite them there. So he's like, I had to come shake your hand and tell you, sorry I didn't get to watch all of it. I had to step out to go vote on some bills. But I mean, that was just really seeing with this new world of technology and spreading out through the internet. Because it's not just the movie. The reason why The Union was successful is because the internet was able to carry it like you couldn't do 20 years ago.
Okay.
If we would have made The Union 20 years ago, no one would know about it.
So via word of mouth, not via YouTube per se, but just through people talking to other people?
No, YouTube too, because we didn't get a distribution deal for 2 years after it was done. It sat.
Okay.
But it leaked. Of course it did. It was all over the internet.
Oh, the people had uploaded pieces.
All over.
So what year did you finish shooting?
We finished in 2007. Did our film festival run in 2007.
Right.
It aired on Super Channel in 2008, and it got its DVD deal in 2009.
Right.
But all these people started, we knew it was on, and we didn't take it off because we're like we were worried about, I was $250,000 in the hole with my dad, and I'm like, I need some way to pay him back.
And that can kill a distribution deal if it's online.
It can, right?
Film festivals don't even like films to be online.
No, so it can be, but we'd already done tons of film, and that's where it leaked. There's actually people trying to sell. We have the film festival copy for $50, and I was like, of course they didn't say we'd done 33 at that point. So fuck, which film festival copy did they have? Who knows? We'd sent out to so many. But at the same time, we're like, man, we had a lot of people writing us being, I never would have heard about your film if you hadn't had it online, and now I will support it as soon as it comes out. So, and it was interesting because we put it online in high res because I was sick of all these shitty versions. Yeah. So I contacted Top Documentary Film, all these people. I'm like, totally cool with you having it up there. Could you please just run this high? Because we spend a lot of time on our lighting and the way we edit. Like, that looks like shit. Can you at least? And they're like, oh yeah, so cool. You're not like mad at me trying to get it. I'm like, no, if you're going to play it, just play the good copy, please. Here's the highest res we can get on YouTube. And then we put a note just on our YouTube, like, hey guys, we understand it's a tough time for the economy around the world. It's not like it was, 10 years ago. If you can afford, if you enjoy the movie and you want to support it, please go buy it off Amazon afterwards. If you can't, we totally get it. Forward it to somebody else and maybe they can afford to. And that got more people being like, oh, these guys are cool. Like, even though I'm still in debt from the union, I still owe my dad $85,000.
Still.
Right? Still.
Jesus, it's not very good finance. I mean, what's your metric for the union? I mean, do you have any idea about the number of times it's been watched? Obviously, I guess it's not technically profitable.
It's an interesting
does
question.
that matter anymore? Those are Hollywood metrics. I'm talking.
I don't know. No, it's an interesting thing because on Netflix it has 750,000 ratings. Right, okay. 4.2 stars out of 5 based on 730,000 ratings.
And
so I'm guessing,
what percentage of people rate stuff?
1 in 5, 1 in 10.
Exactly right.
So,
but then again, the people that watch your movie, it has a very powerful effect.
So it's tough. But then if you go to YouTube, if you look at all the different, because it's coded under different things. Because we just signed a new deal with Super Channel for $30,000. Like I said, I'm still trying to pay my dad back. So they were like, Adam, I hope you're not going to have the one where we're giving it away, right? On your website, like right there saying, here's a high res. And I'm like, so we stopped it for a while, right? But then it came back on, and I don't care as long as the distributor doesn't care, as long as we're not giving it away for free after we just signed a deal with them that they're paying for, right? Okay. I know the president of Super Channel, she's a really good friend of mine. She supports my work big time. She's like, they bought everything I've ever done.
Is that a cable channel in the U.S.? Are they also online?
No, that's Canadian.
Canadian, okay.
Super Channel's kind of like HBO. There is HBO Canada, and then they're the other pay network. So they're kind of like Showtime Canada.
Okay. And they'll keep playing the union.
Well, they just renewed it for 2 years. So if you have Super Channel, you can get it on there. Or now they've got their Super Channel on demand, which is kind of like Netflix. So as long as you subscribe to the channel, you can queue it up anytime. Okay. And they originally bought it, and they like never relicensed a doc. They do first run only. So when they asked me to take it off, I was like, absolutely. Excuse me. I was like, I'll take it off. But then it's still online. But we tried to add it up a few times, and we're well over 3 to 4 million views online between all the different. So because people put it under best marijuana documentary ever, and then it has like a screenshot. I'm like, oh, which one are they? And then I see the union. I'm like, yes, that's somebody else that thinks it's ours, right? Like, so I don't know. And it's interesting in the way as we were talking before the podcast started. You guys coming from finance background, like. In the finance world, if you were to look at the union, to most people, complete failure. You borrowed this money from your family, you haven't even fully paid it back, and you haven't paid them back with profits. That's a shitty investment, especially after we started in 2004, and it's been out now 2013. But for me, I wouldn't have invested in anything different because I have a career because of that now.
Right. Yeah. What happened to you after the union dropped? Like, what was the reception to you as a filmmaker?
It took a while, but I mean, I got respect because in Canada, like everybody had heard about it. It was this cult classic that did very well. And then Phase 4 and Super Channel did great numbers. All the distributors did well with it, right? But I had bad deals because I didn't, we just wanted a deal. We're like, at that point, we were like, I'm like, I need to get something back to sell to my parents, right? And they're like, so then they would.
Colin's nodding. He's like,
yeah.
You just have no bargaining power.
Yeah, you're just like, Phase 4 said nothing up front, and we'll give you 65-35 split in the back for you. But 65-35 split after marketing, recruitment, and some of the marketing. I'm like, what marketing did you do? We put it all online, right? But nothing but love for Phase 4, right? It was just, my sales agent's like, I would have negotiated the shipping and thing a little bit better, but we just wanted a deal, right? And cool thing was with Phase 4 is that I remember asking them, I was saying, what would be a success for you? They're like, for a small indie title, I guess if we sold 20,000 units in the first year, that would be great. We sold 23,000 units in the first quarter, right? We've almost sold 50,000 units for them. If I was in music in Canada, that would be a gold album, right? So it did really well for them. Hasn't made me a millionaire by no stretch. Hasn't made me now I'm with a great company that gives me a base to develop all projects. So whatever I do in my docs is just a bonus now. But docs are a labor of love. But it gave me a career. Like I walked into rooms and people knew how tough it was to privately finance and get these deals. Like people were like, you did all this? Like you did your own tax credits, you did the financing, you produced the film, and you sold it? Like, well, no, I got a sales agent. They're like, yeah, but you were smart enough to bring a sales agent in and to pick the right. I was like, I guess. I just realized I was too dumb to make some of those deals. I needed someone. I guess if that's looking back now, there's a lot of people that can't make those connections but I think it's because my biological father passed away in 2003. So I had to jump into a shitstorm of stuff back then, inheriting a strip club and dealing with all that. So I learned business stuff very fast, like survival business stuff. So I think that kind of transferred over when I did the union.
Okay, but you get labeled as a marijuana filmmaker. So
It's starting to shift now, right?
Okay.
And I try to encourage my audience too. I'm like The Good Son came out in the U.S. Like, I'm so proud of that film. And right now, it's getting rumors of Oscar buzz. Like, it's got 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. It's a fucking fantastic film. I'm just as proud of it as The Union. It wasn't my baby. It wasn't my brainchild. It was done by Chris Tavlerides and everybody out. And I was just honored enough to be a co-producer on it. But it's great. And I Am Bruce Lee's another great one. And, you know, I want people to start looking at my other stuff too. I love the audience I have, but I can do other work too, right? So that's I want to be known for all of it, and hopefully not just one. But
Okay.
I definitely am not shunning the fans I have. If you're out there listening, I love you.
And I want to come back to those movies in a bit, but now everyone's been probably asking you for a sequel. And I'm sure you must have thought, someone was like, yeah, let's call it The Union 2.
Yeah,
and I mean, like, what you can do with a sequel, as we've seen so many times, is you can ruin the whole idea, the concept. You could probably ruin a lot of loyalty as well. And so this is a completely different branded movie, and you must have really thought long and hard about the different message you want to give with this, right?
Really hard. Brett and I really stressed that. The director, he was really stressing about, like, most sequels just suck, and I don't want to do it. And then, you know, we kept seeing everything that was going on in society, and there was a few things Brett's like, okay, I see the angle. First of all, it's now the culture high. The Union was about the underground business in Canada and how that translates, how U.S. policy of it. So it can't be Union 2 because that has no connection. But if you look at our logo, the culture high, we use the exact same font, and then we place the leaf roughly in the same position. So if you know our work, you're like, that's them, right? That's their stuff. And then again, like the Union, so that we can get to people that wouldn't normally watch a pot doc, we stay away from all the stereotypical colors, music, branding. There's no green, there's no rainbows, there's no Rastafari things. It's blue, which both times when we did the Union and then when we did this, we looked at what's the hottest business color. At the time when we did the Union, it was orange. Orange was the big color in Europe, and it was all what the big bands were using in clothing. This time it was the blue with Facebook, Twitter. It's kind of that new internet blue. So we went with that, which the internet is a big chapter in this and how it's even the playing field because of things like podcasts and videos and information. You can't trick people like you could a couple decades ago, right?
Yeah, with a movie trailer and a few posters and this kind of thing.
Well, and even just with information, people can call out your bullshit really fast now. Like, I'd hate to be a politician nowadays, right? Like, you're running on a platform, you better know your shit, because you can get some highly educated people being like, oh, we're not going to, you know, like the marijuana thing, when you get people being like, there's been no scientific evidence to prove that. And people are like, really? Well, why does the U.S. have a patent on cannabinoids for treatment for neurological pain?
Good question.
Oh, interesting, right? Well, I guess there's like, boom. Now that guy's spinning in his heels, being like, why don't you give me more information, right? Like, I can't. And that's what, in this one, we've really been big on trying to get the people, like some of the doctors we've interviewed, anything outside of their work, no comment, right? Like, we're like, what about this study? Not familiar, won't comment on it. Like, they know specifically their studies, and they'll talk to their study. And I don't want to talk about them because I'm giving away, but
yeah.
So we try to go to those people that are like, this is what I can tell you, unequivocally, did the research, that's what it is. But then you try to ask them any of the others, so what about the research? Don't know, no comment, don't know enough about it. Okay. Or if you ask them about pharmaceutical companies and stuff like that, some of them are getting their funding from NIDA and stuff like that. So like, I don't want to comment on pharmaceuticals. I don't want to comment on the National Institute of Drug Addiction. We'll just keep that out of there.
Yeah, you got to be careful as a doctor these days. All right, well, why come to London? I mean, I think for the Union you didn't come here, and I mean, you probably couldn't afford it. This can't be cheap for you to bring your crew here.
It's not.
And do these interviews, and you know, so why? Why here?
Because there are some amazing interviews here. The Europe is doing some amazing. They're taking some amazing criminologists, and I don't know if you're familiar with Professor Nutt out here. That
sat right there about 2 months ago.
There you go. So
yeah,
there's some great guys that really know and they really show how the moral argument gets into this, which is what the bigger picture Brett's trying to do. Is he's looking at the global cultural shift that's starting to happen in the way we look at cannabis laws and all drug laws, right? We're starting to get a consciousness that is different than it was even when we did the Union 5-6 years ago. People are looking harder at things. They're examining the world in a different way. And a big part of that is just the internet. You can just do so much more research. You can, like, good, if you don't believe our film, and to fact check the shit. And you know what that'll do? That's what a great film does, is it gets you to do more research. Don't take our word. We're filmmakers. I'm no fucking scientist or anything. Like, we try to interview the best, and we try to get you the best information as clearly as, but put it in an entertaining way so that you retain it. That's another problem with informational docs is they can get too PowerPoint, right? Where it's just like snooze. And that's why we include people like Joe Rogan and Wiz Khalifa and Be Real from Cypress Hill and all these other people that you get on board too. Here in town, we're going to be interviewing Rufus Hound, right? Who's a local guy that has never come out and really talked about other than something he did recently. He talked about he would decriminalize all drugs. He was on a platform. So, you know, because those people, sometimes they, like Joe, when we did the union, and I'm sorry I'm getting off of why we're here in the UK.
We got time.
But he... you know, we got him, like, we knew him as a Fear Factor guy, and then from UFC. I was a big UFC fan before it got mainstream. In Canada, UFC is like, as you know, when you go back, that's like Mecca.
It's big, right?
It's fighting's in our culture because it's been in hockey, you know, like we just fighting, we get it.
Everybody fights in Canada.
Yeah, just we get. There's guns and stuff, but it's not as big. It's like guys will still say, "You want to go outside? Yeah, let's go do it," right? And then they'll buy each other's beers a week later. Like, "Okay, you got the best of me. It's done." But
So was Rogan out of the weed closet? Was he just coming out?
he was one of the first, and that's what I'll give him. Like, Joe is the coolest guy that. He takes these nobodies from Canada and says, yes, I'll give you an interview for free. No problem. Come on this date. So we go. We have no previous resume. He's like, sure. Based on a friend, Todd McCormick. He's like, Joe, these guys are really good. You know, this guy Adam sunk a lot of money from his dad. They need another like celebrity face. And then Joe ended up being one of the best parts of the union. And the reason why is because you weren't expecting this from him, from people that knew him from Fear Factor and from UFC, didn't know that he smoked. And then that's one of the opening lines. Like, I believe in it too. I didn't start smoking weed until I was 30. I realized I'd have been fucking tricked. You gotta be fucking kidding me, right? It's like, so everybody in the theater's like, that's a Fear Factor guy, right? Like, it shocked them to see him talk about that.
So he came out of the closet on your movie?
Kind of.
Much?
He had already come out, but I think a lot of
public.
people hadn't seen him in that way, right? He'd done some other pot docs that didn't really see the light of day, and he'd done some other little things, but then he got noticed on there. And then the thing about him, though, is he's very educated on it, and he's got the comedic background, so he hits you. And then he's got the regular guy. Like, he brings up some super valid points in the union, but he does it in a funny way, right? Like, literally in the theater, because I've watched the film 300 times. And I don't mind watching it again if I'm in a theater because I like to see people's response that haven't seen it, right? So I can go through it again. And then literally when Joe Rogan comes on, I'm like, and laughter will start in 1, 2. Because I know his lines, they trigger it every time, right? When it goes in
But that's
there.
what you want. I mean, because you're making a dramatic story. It has to piece together. People can't. I love David Nutt. Actually, Professor Nutt's probably the exception. But you can't listen to the clinical story for too long. You need to. Oh, that's Be Real. Oh, it's Joe. He's cracking jokes.
Exactly. You get but that is the key on how you retain the information, right? Is that it has to be entertaining too, right? Like, that's why Inconvenient Truth, great doc, but fuck, that gets boring, right? Because it's just so, like, it was originally just meant to be a PowerPoint presentation, right? Okay. And then they turned it into a film, and it won an Oscar, but that's why you need these people. And that's why some people, I don't respond to any negative stuff. I'm really good at that. I've trained myself. Because some people are like, what the fuck are you getting Wiz Khalifa, the gangster, being on here? First of all, he's not a gangster. He's more of a skater. He's super cool, young artist. Because he was funny as hell in the interview. He was great, and he's a celebrity, and he's going to bring a huge market that wouldn't normally come to see this movie to get educated on what's really going on. But at the same time, we're making a 90-minute movie that has to be entertaining while you retain information. And you have these guys on there, and they're great, and they're funny, and they make you retain things. I see memes all over the internet that are, they don't even quote the union, but they're his quotes from the union, right? Okay. That people are saying, like, this is, Joe would be like, yeah, you can abuse cheeseburgers too, right? He's like, but you don't go shutting down Burger King just because you can abuse something. I could take a fucking fork and jam it in my eyeball. Does it mean forks should be illegal? He's like, I could jump off a bridge. Let's nerf the world, right? And everyone's always howling in the theater and he says that. And he brings a valid point about, like, just because you can abuse something shouldn't make it illegal.
He's got to be the most outspoken, publicly known person in the world for the marijuana cause.
I think he's just the most interesting guy in Hollywood right now, like truly. And he's so down to earth. He's how more people with success should be, right? That are open. And he says that on his podcast that it really resonates with me, that he says that, if you're honest from the beginning of that you're like, this is just who I am, and I'm going to have to make it being this way. Then there's never those curveballs like other celebrities get where later on they're like, oh, you actually found out they're, doing drugs and they're, then you're like, fuck, that person let me down. That's not who I thought they were. But if someone just is who they are from the beginning.
Yeah, just own it, I think. He doesn't never say that specifically, but I think he permeates that. Just own it.
He hasn't said it about himself, but he's talked about other actors or celebrities that now you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're like that, because you thought of them differently because they were pretending to be something that their publicists and stuff had created. Instead of just being like, yeah, like I fucking swear sometimes. I like to drink, or I do this, or whatever your things are, right? Or I used to fight when I was younger or whatever. And he's done it. His podcast, I think, is, just inspired other people to do it and stuff too. It's such a great, I mean, I have nothing but great things to say about it.
I mean, that's why we're here.
Yeah,
That's also
is that what inspired you guys to do yours?
Straight up. Yeah, straight up.
That's also why people believe him so much now too, right? It's just because he wouldn't lie. You know what I mean? He wouldn't go do your film and just bullshit. Like this just not what he would do.
And that's what's even like his sponsors. Like if I don't believe in the product, like and with how big his things, he must be getting thrown all kinds of shit now, right? But he's like, no, if I think it's a shit product, they're an unethical company, like awesome. You wish more people would be like that. Like, no, you guys use child labor. I'm not going to rep your project. I don't care how much money you throw at me as a celebrity. Like, that's honorable, right? Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't want to make money and everything else too. Like, I'm not saying screw capitalism but at the same time, it's good when you're like, no, that company's really unethical. I'm not doing a fucking ad for them, and I'll promote this thing like Bulletproof Coffee or On It or things that I think are cool.
Yeah, I think people get that, over time. So, can you tell us who you're seeing in the UK? And are you going to Europe? I mean, we know Portugal has some very advanced, drug laws and that kind of thing. Are you going to Europe, or could you not afford it, or language barrier, or
language barrier is an issue, right? Cost is always an issue, but we got a bit of money for this film, but. That's why we're here, is like some of the head criminologists and stuff that have really studied the Portugal experiment are why we're here, right? Versus Portugal. Like, and we could go film Portugal, but then you got language barrier and everything too. But there's some people that are they've really taken a couple years and looked at the Portugal situation and are trying to implement suggestions here.
And the Portugal situation, just to break it down quickly, is that they have pretty much decriminalized all drugs?
Oh, no, not pretty much. They have decriminalized all drugs.
Okay.
For a decade. This isn't new, too, right? Okay. So that's why everyone can always say, well, you don't know how that's going to work. A decade's worth of research has now been done there. All drugs, heroin, crystal meth, cocaine, marijuana, all decriminalized. And the way they did is you're allowed a 10-day supply of any drug, and they took the criminal element out of it. So now if you get caught with it, you don't go to jail, but you will get summoned to a treatment court where there will be a lawyer that can help give you advice. There will be a treatment specialist and a doctor and a psychiatrist. And they can look at they can evaluate you if you really have a problem or if you're a functioning or whatever else. And the system, the most fascinating part without giving too much away, because I promised Brett I wouldn't talk to him, is that heavily, as you can imagine, when this was first brought to Congress heavily opposed, right? But the liberals were in power then at the time, and they put it through. And the law enforcement was against it. All these people were against it going through. And now, Dr. Julian Hoopert, who went down to investigate this, who's an MP here, who we did an interview with him at Parliament, they can't find anybody that's against what's been done. Wow. Even all the people that were heavily opposed to it in the beginning have not come down. So that's why we're here versus Portugal itself, is because, and then who we interviewed yesterday, Alex Stevens, he's written a book on it. He's specialized in the Portugal situation. Okay. He's a criminologist that teaches it at Kent University. That's why we're here versus Portugal, is because a lot of the guys that are really taking a look at it and trying to, share that information in other countries are here.
And what's the Portugal situation? Do you walk down there and there's no drug dealers? Is there no crime? There's obviously drug users. But
crime has gone drastically down, and HIV, they had one of the biggest issues with HIV and sharing needles in Europe. That's gone down like the stats are in their comments and in the research, but like 50%. Like the results are really amazing in what they've done. I don't want to give it all away because this is stuff some of the guys are talking about.
Can you buy it or do you still have to buy it illegally?
See, that's the one problem and they're looking at the differences is like, it's still illegal to traffic it, right? So that's where there's and that's where some people are looking at like, well, that's not progressive enough, because we're still not handling the issue. But law enforcement there has said, and they were a big person that were against it, is they, because they said, well, part of the thing we do is we squeeze the addicts to try to get who the distributors are. But they actually said it worked better now. Like instead of, criminalizing people that are just, have mental illness or trauma and they're an addict, they're like, we can just focus on planting guys and getting people to get the big cartels and everything. Mm-hmm. So they actually the new system works better than just preying on the weak that had, because all addiction, like we interviewed Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a world-renowned addiction specialist. He has a great TED Talk if you want to watch it.
I just emailed him actually. He's in the West Coast, right?
Yes, he's from Vancouver.
Vancouver, yeah.
And he's treated, Vancouver's got a free injection site, right, for people to get clean needles and stuff. And he's been a physician there for 25 years. And he said not one in his 25 years of his severe addicts did not have early childhood trauma. He said, if you want to protect your kids from drugs, it's not policy that's going to do it. It's being a good parent, right? Yeah. You have to be a parent. That's where it comes from, right? Yeah. And his TED Talk talks about it specifically, where he goes into, he shows just how young that is too, is because his family's a Holocaust survivor. Yeah. And when they were leaving, where are they from originally? But when they were leaving Europe, he was super happy baby. Then the World War II got announced, right? And all of a sudden he got extremely colicky for like 10 days or 2 weeks. So his mother called the physician, was like, I think Gabriel's really sick. He cannot stop crying. I can't. And the doctor said, well, Mrs. Maté, you're Jewish, correct? And she said, yeah. He's like, we have an epidemic of Jewish babies being colicky now. And he goes to this, he's like, now what would an 8-month-old know about the World War or Hitler or anything? Nothing. But what is that 8-year-old learning from right now? What is his brain stimulating from? The parents. Yeah, body language. He sees their stress. Yeah, he sees their fear. He sees their anxiety. And literally at that young age, that's when your brain develops faster. And the neurons and the connectors and the growth development are starting so big at that age that they start feeding off of this, and then they actually start developing. And that's how you can trigger addictive syndromes and stuff like that, right? Because your brain is developing to certain. And that's why. Wow. I'm giving away too much from the film, but we'll talk about like there's no, I'm happy to do. But it's fascinating when you see that and you learn and look, and then I mean, a good example is Vietnam. There's a study done in Vancouver for the Vietnam War vets, right? Like something crazy, a huge percentage, and I don't get me on the actual numbers, but like something like 75 or 80% got hooked on morphine when they were in Vietnam, right? Ton of them. Yeah. They're in shitty situations, right? It's a shitty fucking war. They don't know why they're there. These guys are popping up out of the ground. Fucking Agent Orange is getting sprayed on your own guys. You're seeing other young men, 18 years old, getting their heads blown off and stuff. Shitty. So they got in a shitty environment. They got hooked on something that made them feel good, right? But now a majority of them, when they came back to North America, got sober. But then the ones that didn't, there's a big percentage that didn't. The ones that didn't, they looked into their history. Almost all of them had some trauma, early childhood trauma or something, why they stayed. It's why, the three of us could go for a knee surgery and they could give you oxycodone or Percocet. We take it for a couple days. Maybe we don't react. For me, when I broke my jaw, I took the opium for one. I fucking hated it. I was sleepwalking. I felt nauseous. For me, opiates are not good. I just deal with the pain. I just have a high pain threshold, and I just say, fuck it, I'll deal with the pain. But other people take it, and then they're hooked on it for 5 years, right?
And you think it's a childhood syndrome.
It filled a gap for them that they were missing, right? When they find it, and that's why it can be whatever the substance is, right? Addiction can be, yes, you can get addicted to marijuana, just like you can get addicted to eating fast food, you can get addicted to porn, you can get addicted to internet, you can get addicted to harder drugs. You can get addicted to anything, and it depends on what it is for you that stimulates you, that's filling the gap that's missing. But
did you ever think about doing a movie about oxycodone? I mean, I know there's been
we're going to be talking about them in this movie and stuff like that. We'll be going heavy into the different stuff, and I mean, it's something that when you look at pro sports and what's going on right now with a lot of guys that are. Derek Bugard was a friend of mine in the NHL, and he had the overdose of the accidental mix of Oxycontin and booze, killed him last year. The New York Ranger, the enforcer. Okay. And and then the NFL with all the concussion. You'd like to see, because the science is there, and I'll give this as a fucking spoiler for those who don't know. The science is there from the universities that cannabis works excellent for neurological pain. Right? So you saw the Olympics just raise their rate to how much you can have. So basically, if you don't smoke right before, and UFC did too, because guys are dealing with pain a lot in the UFC. You're fighting, you're taking headshots, you're getting your arm mangled into positions. Rather than getting you hooked on something that's highly addictive, physically addictive, and any of the opiates, that's really hard on your kidneys and liver. And if you have too many drinks one night and you get used to taking it, you can fucking die, right? It can give you lethal and kill you. Where cannabis works excellent for neurological pain, which opiates have a tough time treating. Opiates can be great for muscles and everything else, but a lot of the time for neurological pain, they do not work. Cannabis can. And if you don't want to smoke it, you know what? They've been very clever, and they've got inhalers now, or they've got oil drips, or they've got other things, so you don't have to.
The technology is fascinating.
The technology is there, so the medicine can be put into it, right? If you look at here in the UK, you have GK or GW Pharmaceuticals, right? They have Sativex spray, which is right here, that's being developed here. Okay. Oh yeah, and the United States has allowed that to go. This is where the fuckery gets into this whole thing, is in the United States, cannabis is scheduled as a Schedule I narcotic, which means it has no known medical value. Right in there with heroin, right? They're in the same class. Yet, in Schedule 3, synthetic marijuana is listed as Schedule 3, saying it does have some therapeutic, but only if it's synthetic, right, from GW or Marinol, which was done by Unimed.
Okay.
If you're taking that version, then there is some medicine, and it is Schedule 3, and you're allowed to take it.
Okay.
But the plant itself is a Schedule 1, which is just a goofy concept, because you're like, well, you had to take the plant to make the medicine, yet the plant has no... And then the United States has a patent on cannabinoids, which is in cannabis to make...
Do you cover this in the culture?
Oh, yes, we go into
Okay.
great detail
Okay.
about this. So I won't talk any more about it.
I got a
Brett's
question
going to
about
be
it.
killing me.
Do you talk openly about your own cannabis consumption?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And that was funny because one of the guys, when you put the question things out there, like ask Adam a question, he's like, have you ever gone long periods of time without smoking? Yes, I don't smoke. So I've gone strenuous times without smoking. Have I smoked? Absolutely. Did I inhale? Fuck yeah. Did I toke properly? Yes. Unfortunately, I knew how to do it right away, the first time I tried in high school. Some people say they didn't get high, they didn't know how to toke right. I learned just fine and got really fucking baked the first time I got high. And got very paranoid because I smoked too much. It's not for me. Personally, I don't enjoy it. I'm not a big drinker either. My main drug is caffeine. I love that shit. And I'll be kind of like a politician with caffeine, where it's like I only read the studies, like, because politicians are like lawyers, right? Whatever their argument is going to be, they'll find research to help their argument. Like a defense lawyer, we're going to like, okay, this is going to be our defense. We're going to say self-defense. We're going to look at all these different case files that match self-defense and similar to yours. We're going to use that. Politicians do the same thing. They're like, go out and find research on, okay, we got these 4 studies that show they help my argument. But then there's other studies that argue it. And they're like, well, no, don't bring those things up. Those don't exist. Only these ones do. That's what I do with caffeine.
So
does
that help you or hurt you, the fact that you don't smoke and don't consume it, like with your audience or with anything?
I think it definitely helps with the film, because then people realize that we are putting the professionalism into the film, right? We're not activists trying to make a point.
Right.
And that's also why we're not affiliated with any particular, like not with LEAP, not with Drug Policy Line. I'll work with all of them and we'll interview all of them and look at the different ones, but we don't have any one. I'm not front row of rallies. I'm not a smoker. I think it's important not to be a smoker. I mean, it's not that I'm doing it. I'm not smoking for that reason. I just have never, I don't really enjoy it. Maybe a couple times a year we're camping out in the bush or something like that, and I'll do it, excuse me. But part of the thing is too, is the union, we're nobodies, right? And now, I mean, if you Google my name, a lot of shit's going to show up. So if we're crossing the border too, I don't want to give them any fucking excuse,
Okay.
right? So when they go to ask me, like, do you smoke? No, right?
Okay.
And like, because that's I don't know if you just saw recently, someone was trying to cross from White Rock, and a girl admitted, they're like, oh, do you smoke weed? And she's like, yeah, I smoke. I don't have any on me. I smoked like a week ago, and they denied her access, and now she can't go to the States for 5 years.
Wow. I think
5 years?
Yep. And just because she admitted that she did it on her personal time, wasn't smuggling
Right.
any, wasn't, but and this was coming across the border in Washington where it's legal.
Yeah.
Right? So they're kind of like, okay, it's legal in your country, so I'm not even, or in this state, I'm not even breaking, but I guess border would be considered federal.
Federal, yeah.
Right? But then they brought up a good thing because Justin Trudeau just came out and said that he smoked a couple months ago while in office. Right? Very few, a lot of politicians admitted when they were younger, but he's running to be the next prime minister of Canada.
Yeah. Mm.
And he said, yeah, I did it like 3 months ago. It's not a big thing for me, but I did it. And he's like, I just wish a lot of other politicians, because I know there's a ton
Sure.
that I don't want to be a rat that do it, right? Where it's like, do as I say, not as I do. And we're still doing these policies. So now people are saying, okay, well, next time Justin goes to cross the border, you should deny him too then, right? Because he said it on camera.
Yeah.
In front of everybody, right? Like he should be denied coming across the country as
I
well.
think it helps your case, the fact that you're not the smoker, because ultimately, I mean, the people you're trying to convince are probably the people that at least publicly don't say they smoke. I'm sure there's people that smoke but don't think they're smokers as well. I'm sure
Yeah.
you have people that actively smoke cannabis that are anti-cannabis in
Yeah.
some way. But like, for example, we had Professor David Nutt in here, or his colleague, Dr. Robin Carhart-Harris,
Yeah.
who are doing some amazing studies on psilocybin in the brain. And David Nutt is, he's great. He's constantly in the press. He's constantly pushing people's buttons.
Yeah.
You know, his famous thing here was that equity, which is horse riding, is more dangerous
dangerous
than
than
ecstasy.
ecstasy, yeah.
And it made everyone mad, but he's a scientist, and you run the numbers, and there's more deaths from riding horses than taking ecstasy. And so, but he doesn't claim to do any of that himself. And I think you need people like that to be proponents that aren't consumers publicly. And then you can put those up and say, look, Grandma, Professor David Nutt is doing the research. And
You're exactly right. I mean, and that's a big thing when we look at people. We don't want people that really are on either side of it. We just want people that have looked into it. Like, Alex Stevens, a criminologist, like just an intelligent man, doesn't smoke weed, doesn't. But he just looked at it. He's looked at Portugal. He's looked at laws. He's a criminologist. He's looking at different scenarios and saying, like, we need to find alternatives. And the good thing is the real smart people don't say they have an answer, right? Like, some of them think decriminalization is a model. Some of them think full legalization is a model. Some of them think other things. Like, we try to pick, and that's the cool but challenging part with this one is, like, after the first one, we have credibility. So a lot of doors have opened. But now it's like, okay, it's not just how good are their credentials. Now, because we're a movie, we're like, let's try to, it's great with the interview. You can watch some of their interviews. How well do they speak? Do they have charisma? Do they have something that jumps at you? How are their personal lives? Have they done anything other shade? Even, that's what sucks is even if it's something nothing to do with drugs, but they have some other element, then you can't really have them anymore because then people will be like, oh, well, he cheated on his wife, so I discredit him, right? Even though that has nothing to do with the scientific research, but that's how it works. So we try to pick. And that's why we came here to the UK. Is there's some amazing people like Professor Nutt and some other people that have come and done this stuff, and they've put the science into it. And now the people arguing with them are arguing on moral issues, which makes them look silly. Yeah. Right.
Who else are you seeing, or can you tell us? While
Yeah,
you're here?
I can tell you.
How many people are you going to interview while you're here?
I think it's like 10.
Okay.
So we've got Annie Michonne, who is former MI5.
Okay.
Which for those American listeners is equivalent to the FBI and dealt with international smuggling and also terrorism and how it funds stuff. So fascinating interview there. We interviewed Dr. Julian Houpert, who was an MP. He's also a scientist before that. Really, really well-spoken, brilliant man. We did Alex Stevens, as I said. Sir Richard Branson is confirmed for the 20th.
Awesome.
Nice.
We've got a brief time with him at his
Didn't
house.
his son make kind of a...
Yeah, his son,
Yeah.
Sam Branson, did one, Breaking the Taboo.
Okay.
I don't know what happened with the thing because they haven't got any like DVD deals or something. I don't know if there's something tied up with clearances or something.
But it was released, that movie.
Was released.
So
They
it's
put it on the
online.
internet.
Yeah, that's
they
right.
did a great viral internet campaign.
With the faces.
Yeah, with the
of-
faces
yeah,
like,
yeah,
hey,
just,
I'm Morgan Freeman, I'm
Yeah.
breaking the taboo. Hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm breaking the taboo. So he's on, which is amazing, right? And it's interesting because when I mentioned his name when we were coming over here, you know, a lot of people were like, whoa, you got him to do an interview? Like, even the people that know me, and they're like, it was like a whole new level. They're like, whoa, someone like him, like an intelligent, really successful businessman is going to come on? I'm like, yeah, this is, you know, that's the way the people that are coming on now, they're super intelligent, that are looking at the situation from really great perspectives and looking at things and saying things don't add up, they don't work. We can't just keep banging our head against a brick wall and expecting it to change. We have to start looking at alternative models. What those are, who knows? We're not suggesting any of them, right? Like, that's one of the great parts of our first film is that we say the only thing that really seems to make sense is that none of this makes any sense.
Yeah.
We don't say this is what should happen and this is the thing. And I don't fucking know.
You want to start a dialogue is what you want.
That's exactly what you want. Go do research. Go encourage other people to do more. Just because it takes a long time. You got to shift. And I think it's happening faster now with the internet, like shifting of minds and stuff. But I mean, if you look back to other policies, I mean, people used to think it was crazy to let women vote. Right? That was like ludicrous of them. And like, we can't allow that. Like, and now you look at that and think, how fucking ridiculous was that we didn't let them? Like, they're human beings. They're intelligent. Sure. Yeah. Some of them are a hell of a lot smarter than me. A lot of them are a lot smarter than me. Right? My wife clearly is much smarter than me. Or interracial marriages. That was illegal in the United States till 1968.
Yeah.
What is an interracial marriage? I'm Scottish, Ukrainian, and Italian. Like, does that mean
everyone in Canada?
I can't marry one of them? Like, what's it like? Or I can only marry someone?
Right,
like, if they're like, and I learned that from I Am Bruce Lee. Like, I thought that was fucking crazy. That what interracial marriages only in this like we're not talking hundreds of years ago. 1968.
Wow.
In the state of California is when they passed a bill to allow interracial marriages. And when Bruce Lee got married to Linda Lee, there was still, although the law had been passed, it still was not accepted. They were just kind of like the Vietnam War and then an Asian, even though Bruce Lee was American. Right, he was born in San Francisco.
Right.
Well, but he grew up in Hong Kong, right? And he clearly looked Asian, but he was 1/6 German, right? So he experienced racism on all sides because when he was studying Wang Chung in China, they wanted to kick him out because he's 1/6 German. But Ip Man was like, "Fuck, he's my best student. We're not fuck that. He's staying." Right, but then he experienced it when he came here. Like, we're Asian. He's like, no, I'm born in San Francisco. I'm American.
Yeah, the Chinese had issues with him being part American. Right?
Yep,
So
they had a hard time. He experienced it, like, didn't matter what side of the pond he went on, he experienced racism. And that's why Kung Fu, the series, that was his. He wrote it. That was meant to be him. But then they're like, Americans just aren't going to accept an Asian superstar after the Vietnam War, so we're going to get David Carradine instead.
Really? Love that series, man. That's old school. So when you interview these people, I mean, obviously you've got, I think, a certain narrative in mind, and you obviously can ask them questions. I mean, do you ever get to a point where you're like, you just rap with Howard Marks and you're like, damn it, he said this, but I kind of wish it was this, because then we can, I mean, obviously it's got to be genuine, but sometimes do you wish you would have asked a question or wish you would have gotten
No, this is a
response?
great thing, and it's really unorthodox way we do it, but I think it gives us such an edge, and I'm giving away one of our secrets here. This is copywritten, people, so other filmmakers can't do this. But
is Brett your director?
Yeah, Brett's the director. Okay. He's the master. Like, I help on the producing side and put people together, and I'm the face, and he prefers that. He doesn't like doing podcasts and stuff because he's so worried about saying the wrong thing. And brilliant, probably the most talented young director in North America, and I hope the Culture Eye puts him on a whole new level. And then Ice Gardens we're doing after. But Brett has a list of questions. He does research. He has an idea of what things he wants to, what's going on with popular culture and what we need to challenge and what things we need to investigate. So he writes 4 pages of questions, 4 pages to 5 for certain people because he wants to cover everything. Like, I don't know if maybe because we allow for the film to grow, right, as we're going. So if someone throws us a curveball and says, you really need to look at this study, and then Brett will be like, and the way we do it is I do the interviews and I have them looking at me and we have the cameras on them, and Brett operates one of the cameras. But Brett tells them before the interview, he'll jump in at times because he's the director, but then still talk to me because all the eye lines and lighting set up for that. But he'll see something or see the guy get passionate about something, like, that's interesting because that makes me think about it. Why don't go tell us more about that? Go more into that. Whoa, we had no idea about that. Tell us more about what you found in that research, right? So we allow the film to grow because he's got this outside perspective. He's not caught engaged like I am in the conversation. He's looking at it almost from this bird's eye view. Like when you play pro sports, a lot of times, sometimes watching it, you can see like, oh, that's what, my elbow's not coming high enough for the left hook, right? Or something like that. Like, oh, I see what he's doing there. You see, so him having that kind of bird's eye view and from behind the camera while I'm doing the interview, he always interjects. And he's like, what about this? Oh, that's an interesting point. That makes me think about this. Why don't you talk about this? So he has, and then he's super crazy about having just every question. Like some of these, I'm like, you really want to ask him that question? He's like, yeah, I want to hear what he has to say. Like, because we interviewed one of his favorite, like basically Brett didn't want to do the film if we didn't get Howard Bloom. And if you don't know who Howard Bloom is, wiki that guy, he's literally up there with minds of Hawkins, and he's supposed to be one of the geniuses of our time. He's written the book, The Lucifer Principle, Genius of the Beast, The God Problem, all the fascinating. Yeah. He studies human behavior, and he can equate how a lot of the things that are going on in politics and with prohibitions and everything come right down to human behavior. It's not a capitalist thing. It's not a political thing. It's human behavior. And how a lot of the times you can present evidence, but you're going to start responding with the moral part of your brain just because we're introducing information that doesn't usually come in your circles. And the immediate reaction is, no, don't accept what you have to say. Fight it. That's a human thing. In fact, it's a species thing because it's supposed to be the hierarchy too, the elitist being able to say, do as I say, not as I do. That is in every species on our planet, right? Like he said, from puppy dogs to shellfish, it's the alphas get to eat first and fuck first, and then the beta, and everybody's all the way down to you have the featherless chicken, right? That gets pecked on by everybody.
All right, so you're going to talk to him for the movie?
We already have. He's already interviewed.
Right,
he was a great, and that one, Brett asked him some of the questions. I'm exaggerating, of course, but I'd be like, why is the color blue? And I'm like, do you really want it? Brett's like, yeah, I'm interested to hear what he has to say on that. Well, the color is blue because he was a fascinating, 72 years old, and he got hit with chronic fatigue syndrome really bad. And now he's using an experimental drug that's got him over it. And 72 years old, he's now got because he was doing he couldn't even walk, and then he got himself to where he could do 1 push-up, and now he's up to over 300 push-ups at one time at 72 years old. He does that. He challenges it by 1 more every week to be able to do.
Sounds pretty crazy. Sounds like me back in the day. Yeah. So you get all these awesome interviews, and you go back to the States, and how the hell do you edit this thing together? Is it you do that with Brett? Is it Brett's job? I mean, because this is worse than a feature film. Because you've got, this guy can go first, this guy can go first, this guy, I can say,
that magic, Jesus. Honestly, I can't speak to too well. That is Brett and Steven. And then Steven's our other guy that's even more silent. But I'll tell you, for those editing fans out there, Stephen Green is going to do some EPK on this one. We're going to actually sit him down. We were joking because Stephen, once you get to know him, he talks lots, but when you come in first meetings and stuff, a lot of times he doesn't really say anything.
Okay.
And people will be like, Stephen, it's nice to meet you. You didn't say a word, but a pleasure to meet you, right? very well thought, and him and Brett will sit in that editing room, and
What's EPK?
electronic press kit. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be kind of like behind the scenes. Like, I don't know if you watch any of the ESPN 30 for 30 series.
No, I haven't.
But they would interview like the directors or the producers and ask them like what inspired them to do this piece and stuff like that. So you will get to see Steven on this, where he usually stays pretty low key. He's always like the furthest on the picture. And so he's the editing master, and Brett will obviously sit in with him and go over it. And I don't usually get involved much at that point. Brett tells me who he wants. I go after those people. I have a good understanding of what we're going for the film too. But
so you kind of storyboard it, I guess, a little bit?
He does all that. Yeah. Like, he does all that, and I don't get in his way there. And it's a great system because he puts the pressure. Like, he's got every director's dream where he doesn't have an executive producer saying, well, no, I changed it, change this. And Brett, the way he is just he's, a perfectionist, is that he'll literally, then he puts it, he's like, oh, that's good. And he's like, fuck, it could be better. And Adam gives me all this freedom and everything else. So fuck, nope, let's dive back in. I can make that better, and I can tweak some things. I can make it even more perfect. So I don't go over their shoulder. I let the people do what they do. And it was interesting because Pete McCormick, who directed Facing Ali and I Am Bruce Lee, he was saying, he's like, Adam, he's like, it's so refreshing to have a producer like you that lets us do what we do, right? Like, we've now built a great friendship. He's helped us get interviews. He's like, I wish more of them would just let us do what we do. Especially when it comes to docs, because it's not like you've got $100 million budgets and studios are getting in your way and stuff like that. He's like, I tend to do that a lot. I just let people do what they're really good at. And if I see some indications that, holy fuck, this is going in the wrong direction, then I'll jump in, or maybe they're not right for the project because they're just too crazy. But I mean, we have a great, the three of us just work fantastic on the way we do. And I'm not going to fix anything that's not broken.
Okay. But you narrate the film, is that right?
I narrate the film.
Your voice
right, Brett's the narration.
Okay. And so your voice is going to be throughout the film. Similar to the Union.
Similar to the Union,
Do we see your face?
I don't know if you're going to see me as much because we haven't done stuff where you kind of see me going into rooms and stuff like that. But Brett said there might be, like, kind of like where you saw me walking and we'd be talking, like, in between sections. Maybe not. Like, ideally, like, that's the thing is if we have all this great stuff and this news footage and all these other things, you might not need me, right? But Brett likes where he's like, I like having the ability that if I do need you to tie some sections together, we can come up with something clever to do that. But
and he gets B-roll of you anyway.
He gets B-roll and stuff like that. But, that's where even the first one, or I'm glad I checked my ego, because originally it was supposed to be kind of about my story and how I got into it. And then I was like, my story is not needed in the unit, so we took me out, and then I was just the host, right, and just kind of going on the journey with everybody. Right. And again, with this, it's like, I'm not important, right? The information we're trying to already get. Like, I'm happy to jump in if I'm needed for certain things to tie sections together, to keep the entertainment up or something, fine. But I also think the film will be just as great if you don't see me and you just hear me, and maybe I'm just in the few odd back scenes or something.
Okay.
It all depends on what we get once we start getting the editing room. Then we'll really know where some of those things need to come together.
If there are any gaps. So fast forward 6 months. Is this you're gonna release this in March of next year? Is that right?
No, it's gonna be, we're hoping to premiere at South by Southwest at the end of March, hopefully. Okay. But it all depends on, like, we've got a monster of footage and everything to go through.
How many hours did it care?
Oh, fuck, I don't know. Because the thing is, we're doing 2 cameras, right? So you have both of them recording from different angles.
So 100 plus.
Yeah, we have, it'll be tons. And then the archival footage and then getting it in. But we hope to have a rough cut in and do it at South by Southwest, and then the full launch on April 20th, 2014.
Okay. And so fast forward is to like September 2014. Like, what's the big win in your mind? Like, I know you probably manage your own expectations and you don't have that, but like, what in your mind would be like, Jesus, we really killed this, or so many people saw this? I mean, like, what is the win?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to think. I've just been so tied up in trying to deliver. The win would just be that, again, people are like, just the audience is like, you did it again. Like, you were able to educate and get people interested in a subject matter they weren't going to go look at before, right? And that it keeps growing like that and keeps becoming something, again, that's like an informational piece that, like The Union right now is the highest rated drug documentary on IMDb by popular vote. It's 8.1 out of like 5,500 votes, right? None of the other ones that have been done, House I Live In, How to Make Money Selling Drugs, any of those ones are that high. Okay. So that's my goal, is we just want to make a great film. I hope we can do that, and we are right on line to do it. The interviews we have already are fucking fantastic. And we still have other great ones coming, right? Like we have the Young Turks, we have Joe Rogan, like Snoop Dogg, Wiz Khalifa, Be Real, Gabor Mate, Judge Jim Gray, former Supreme Court or former Deputy Police Chief of LA, Steve Downing, Cash Heed, who was the Solicitor General of BC and the head of the narcotics squad. I mean, then you come out here and we have Alex Stevens, criminologist, head of the Portugal study from Kent University, Julian Hooper, Professor Nutt, as you know, is fantastic.
You've already interviewed him?
He's
coming up
Monday or Tuesday.
Okay,
he's coming up. Excited for that one.
You almost have enough interviews to have your own like TED Talks on weed.
Well, that's what I got asked to do a
And
TED Talk
re-release.
here right before, but we were shooting and it was like, and then they were just like, "What's your script? What's your script?" I'm like, I don't really do scripts. I would do bullet points and go up there and. It's kind of pissing me off. They kept asking me for a script, but I was too busy anyway. They're like, "We need to go over your script and what you're going to say," and I didn't like that. I was like, "That's not me. I'm not like a doctor where I'm going to have this like, I'll go over bullet points and then I'll speak to those, but my live action is better for me than." But it just really was a scheduling conflict. It was in my hometown. We were filming and we're always such slaves to the talent, right? Because they're giving us free interviews, so
you have to go.
Someone's like, tomorrow at this time, then we have to make it work, right?
So will this hit theaters, or is that not going to be this kind of film?
No, it'll hit theaters.
It will.
Phase 4 is giving it a theatrical release.
Okay.
But when you say that, people have to understand that's not a Thor theatrical release, right? Because that's like $100 million spent on theatrical.
Will you have a marketing budget, or will
Yeah,
it?
no.
Okay.
Phase 4, I just actually spoke with them. They are super excited to see, the numbers that we have, and the numbers continually keep growing. And Kickstarter is so powerful for that. Dropping the line powerful in there, because it represents to the business world, because this is a film business, right? Where they don't care, you win awards and you can talk about, you got all these great interviews. They don't care. How much are they going to spend and how much they're going to make is what distributors care about, right? And to them, when they see what the fans did on Kickstarter, that resonates with them. They're like, wow, you were able to raise $240,000 on Kickstarter by yourself without any real marketing. That was just you using your social media.
Yeah, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the Kickstarter campaign. When did you do it? Why did you do it? And did you have other options?
No, Kickstarter was our only option because we went back to market with the idea for the Cultrai, and all the previous distributors came on board. And please, people, support those people, because they've supported all my work and they support Indies. Phase 4 came on board right away. Super Channel, who bought the Union, came on right away. Eagle Entertainment Australia came on right. Yes, and they all gave us a little bit more money than they gave me for the Union. But it's still, when we looked at budgets, we're like, fuck, that's still not enough to make this film that much better than the Union and really try to make it a global thing and go to other countries and interview people. And so we had a gap that we're missing around $200,000. We're like, fuck. And we try to get a US pre-sale, but none of the US TV networks will buy a doc until it's done. They're not, especially not about pot. They're like, no, it's a dead issue. We're not interested. So we're like, fuck. So then we went to the fans and literally said, okay, we knew what we were missing. And we went to the fans and said, this film won't get made unless you come up with, we need $190,000 is what we needed.
Can you talk about the whole budget overall? Or
the whole budget is $670,000.
Okay,
so
you need
we
that
had
to fill the gap.
Yeah, so we needed that. My family has put in another $140. So we're back in again.
They're not the most savvy investors, are they?
They believe in it.
Still owe them 85.
Yeah, I'm right back to what I initially invested in the Union.
Did your dad run a fund? I'd love to get involved.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're raising some money.
Yeah. He just believes. But in all fairness, every time and we're still getting residual checks for the Union. That's a great thing, is it is still collecting.
Okay.
But just the way distributors do is they hold it. With the remaining $85,000 that I owe my dad, he will get it back. But just they do this hold. It's you do this. We just re-signed Super Channel, which they never relicense. They only do first run, but they relicense the Union, which is fucking amazing, to help promote the Cultrai when it comes out. We sold for another $30,000, but we get it in installments of $4,500 a month for the next so many months or whatever, right? Or every quarter or something like that, $1,500 a month. As soon as I get a check, I pay the various business fees of just year ends and whatever accounting and shit I need done. And then I just give it to my parents, right? And my dad doesn't need the money, but that's not the point. I made a deal with my dad. He believed in me. I made a promise. I don't care how much my dad makes or whatever else. Money's never been a big thing to my dad. That's not... we had a great heart-to-heart last time we were hanging out with my little boy, and he said, Adam, he's like, if I raised you to measure yourself by how much money's in your bank or the possessions you owned or the position or title you hold, then I failed as your dad, and your mom failed as your mom. So
award-winning documentary producer.
That's
a title.
Yeah.
You're not the
I
Buddha.
guess, yeah. So
That's a good point.
so yeah, he was Game to come by Cannabis. So I'm not making money on this film, despite what everybody thinks. Like, that'd be the only downside of Kickstarter is people look at it and they're like, yeah, 240 grand, blah. I'm like, that's nothing. The budget's 670. That's like a chunk of it, right? That's just, we needed to get the whole thing.
But you know you need that extra $250,000 to make a good movie into a great movie. Right?
Yeah, well, in the 240 is only what shows on Kickstarter too. What actually went in our accounts is 210.
Okay.
Because you have certain money that doesn't come through, right? You have the 5% charge from Kickstarter, the 3% charge from Amazon, and then you have the cost. And then even out of that, you have the cost that you have to reimburse all the gifts, which is we've calculated to be $28,000.
Okay, what you're giving back.
What you're giving back. Okay. So it's really 180 that we take from that, right? Out of that. But I just explained to the Kickstarter because a lot of people are like, well, where'd the money? That's where it went, right? Very transparent. But the fans for that are super cool. They get it.
And you did that in 43 days or something.
43
When
days.
did you start that campaign?
In August. We did it a while because we had a big hold up because we needed to get the gap financing in our pre-sales, right? That took a while. So we didn't want to get into production till then. So there was a big lag after we did it for a while to get into production. Plus, Brett and Steven were booked on reality shows. Steven was editing Bachelor Canada, and Brett was working on a show called The Mistress. And so they had contracts that they couldn't get out of for a while too. So there was some, which was kind of good because it gave us time to do research because some things had changed, with Washington and Colorado legalizing and what was going. So it was good. We had to do some more research. It all seemed to work out now. And then schedules for people we want to interview, it all seemed to work. But so we did that, and then now we've been running like crazy. Like I was hoping to get a week off this summer. 1 week I wanted to spend with it. But just when you're a slave for WizLeaf is like, I can do this week at this time. Boom, okay, we're done. So much for my week off, gone. Toronto, right? And then, we got to do this. Oh, this doctor just lined up. He can only do this day, so got no time off. So I'm hoping, I know at Christmas time the family is going to Costa Rica, so I'm going to get some time then. Nice. But I don't think I have any time off till then.
How do you support yourself? I mean, how do you live?
Oh, well, that's the great thing is I'm in the best position ever now as far as that. The company I just got on with, Aquila Productions, it's a production company. That's where the investment of what the union did is totally great for me, right? Is that I now have a salary with them. Okay. It's not outrageous. It's good. Well, let's be honest, it's $62,000 a year. That's what I make up there. So, and then Canada Medical.
Very transparent, this man.
Very
But you live in Alberta, so decent tax rate.
Yeah, that's right. That's what knows, right? And medical's good there, and everything's good. So, I can now. It's so nice, and I only started with them a few months ago, and they're the best. I literally, even though that's for someone to get me to leave now, they'd have to offer me $500,000. I am so happy where I am right now. To me, $62,000 a year is I'm like, oh wow, my credit cards are not maxed out. I can actually start building my credit rating back, and I can provide for my daughter, my little boy, and give my wife a little bit better. And there's such a great environment. They're so supportive, and we're working on other projects together, and it's a creative environment, and we're looking at shows and docudramas and feature films, and the CFO has become one of my best friends, and the president feels like an uncle to me. It's awesome. So they gave me the break that I needed. Otherwise, I was this close to quitting right before Kickstarter. I was this close.
Because otherwise,
my family had talked about everyone. And my wife was the one that was the soldier, because I asked her, everyone had kind of said, maybe it's time, and you did great things with the union, but you got a boy now and your daughter, and you need to start bringing home some paper. So I talked to my wife and I said, babe, and I never, I always worked full. I was working at Shaw as a salesperson. I worked at Cintas selling uniforms and mats while I was producing. I never just sat around the house I'm trying to make it as a filmmaker. I worked full time and did it as a second job. I was working as a doorman for my boxing coach's club. Only I think a year and a half ago. I was working during the week, and then I'd work Friday night and Saturday night at the club and only have Sunday off. And anytime my kids were sleeping, I'd be staying up late, doing research and producing and trying to get things together to go. And I'd be calling in sick for my job to fly to Toronto to try to pitch to the networks to try to get a show going so that I could. And my wife was the one that said, I asked her, I said, do you want me to quit and just try to do? And she's like, no, because then you're going to be fucking miserable, and our marriage will suck. So she got him. It's never like you're sitting around the house hoping one of these things take off. You always work. Then if you were doing that, I'd have a problem. But you've always brought home money to support the family. So yeah, not a ton, right, but enough that we survive. We're never. And there's a couple times the bank account gets a little low, overdraft kicks in, or then check comes in. But that's how now. Now I've been given, we're the first time since I started my filmmaking career, stable.
So they're paying you to spec out future projects. So
All their other projects to
Okay.
bring in, because we have another one called Ice Guardians, which I've been working on for 4 years. Another one that everybody told me to give up.
What's that about?
It's all about the in-depth role, the misunderstood role of hockey enforcers in the NHL.
Oh, cool.
I've got a fantastic demo. It's probably some of my best work. If you guys want to see it, it's like 5 minutes. I don't know if you guys put that on shows.
I don't. I'm not Red Band, but
I'll
put a link on it later.
We can watch it afterwards.
Yeah.
But it's not free. I can show you guys because it's not meant for the public. It's just it's a private video. But some of my best work, and finally we got the rights, like HBO 24/7, to go through a season and follow the guys through a season, and then interview old legends and everything else. And we brought Kelly Chase on, former Tough Guy. He's a producer, and.
Do you get into the whole, suicide from a lot of this, brain damage? Because it's been coming up with the enforcers.
But you see, with that, there's a typical, like the marijuana thing, where they're trying to pull things together that don't connect.
Okay.
Because Bugard was a friend of mine, right? And his situation, it's like he got mixed Oxycontin and the lethal overdose of booze, right? Which no doubt punches to the head and stuff didn't help. But he originally got the prescription when he hurt his shoulder. From a shoulder surgery he had, right? He fell to the ice, hurt his shoulder, and then got hooked. And if you understand what I just explained about addiction, right, that it's all coming from stuff when he was younger, right? This stuff when he got hooked on it later is not, I'm not saying that it doesn't increase it or make it, but it's not the only factor.
Okay.
Which is why there are superstar players that aren't fighters, that aren't taking headshots, that are very addicted to drugs too. There's a ton in the NHL that are fucking madly addicted to blow. I know, because all of them used to come to my hometown in the summertime, because Kelowna is the Napa Valley of Canada. And they used to go to my buddies that I knew from high school that sold coke, and were doing mad amount. Some of them played on the Canadian Olympic team. Okay, so there's people
the
with
next documentary.
Yeah. So there is mad rampant, and same with alcoholism. You look at Theon Fleury, right? Suffered from all kinds of addiction problems, and it all came back to he was molested from his coach, right? Not to do with fighting, not to do with headshots. And then you had Rick Rippon, right, who everybody tried to tie in. He committed suicide. He was suffering from depression when he was a teenager before he even started getting into the physical play of hockey. And then you have Wade Belak that they try to say was in there. Wade Belak's family, to respect them, I'm not getting into details, has put on his death certificate accidental death, right? So if you think about what accidental deaths are, there's a few other people, David Carradine and lead singer of In Excess, had the same way. So you guys can bring, but that was his. So to connect his to the other thing has no correlation.
Do you address this whole, what is it called, encephalogy? Do you address this whole concussion-based,
absolutely.
depression?
There's no, and I think
because they're enforcers, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
their job is to take
There's no
hits.
doubt that the headshots, and there's drama there, but like a lot of the tough guys say, is that like, then it's great that they're bringing awareness to that, but they should bring awareness not just for the tough guys. Sidney Crosby and Eric Lindros, right, are having major problems. They don't fight, right? You're playing contact sports, you're going to get hurt, right? There's going to be headshots. And they're showing a lot of the concussion syndrome is from neck snapping. So all those constant just body checks into the thing and your head snaps, like that's where they found where Sidney Crosby's whole problem was something in his neck, right? That whole problem he had was a tweak he had in his neck. And that's why he went to all these different specialists and they couldn't figure it out. Something in his neck because they were diagnosing his head so much.
Okay. So there's more to talk about.
We
here
will
than
address
just
it,
that.
but the overall message that I've always tried to get with Ice Guardians is that you have these guys that love hockey so much that they're willing to take on this role, that even when they make the sport, you have a majority of people saying they're big dummies that don't belong there, and that is just not true. George Perro says that he's like the top 10 or 6 highest IQ in professional sports. He has his degree in finance from Princeton University. He is no dummy. He could go work. Well, I mean, he has the same degree. I think you guys have a financing background, right?
Man. Yeah, probably does.
Yeah,
Probably does.
but he loves the sport so much that he's willing to take that role just to get 4 to 6 minutes of ice time, because that's what he loves. Now, in a time where sports have gotten so business and so about signing the Nike contract, to me, that's compelling. That's the most attractive underdog story, that here you have a guy that loves the sport so much that he's willing to take that role. And there is a ton of the players that have no regrets about their career, that they say the sport gave them everything, it owes me nothing, right? Because now I'm a broadcaster, and now I have all these other things. The sport gave me everything. I'm not saying, and unfortunate for some of the other players where things went wrong, but if you look at kind of the troubles they had, when you understand what I explained about addiction, there's things that went on before then that which even drove them to be kind of a protector, right? Like they were abusing their young, so then they want to be the protector for others, right? And then that's what drives the addiction. It's not just the headshots. No doubt headshots are tough, and it's such an interesting thing in sports. I'm not glorifying the fighting, and I don't want to put a negative spin on it. I want to honor the players that did this for a role and have their story told correctly for the first time.
Okay. Well, you're a producer, so you need to get into character, because character is ultimately the story. Do you want to get away from documentaries? I mean, and do a pure drama or a pure...
I do want to do a drama.
Just
of course, I
cause?
think every filmmaker wants to do a drama. Well, no, and there's one I want to do is my story about how I grew up when my dad passed away and I took over, and I grew up around the Hells Angels motorcycle club in Canada.
I'll
I
buy a
still have a
ticket
lot
for
of
that.
it. So especially with Sons of Anarchy and the way it's going. I mean, I went through a really interesting, my biological father passed away, and that's so the audience doesn't get confused. My stepdad is the one who invests in my movies, but my mom got remarried when I was 2. So I just was really, I love both my dads equally. They were both amazing father figures in my life.
That's a cool thing. Some people have none, you have
No
2.
father figure, and I have 2, which is probably why I have like a real sensitive side and underneath this tough exterior that I used to have. I'm way mellow now, but I used to scrap a lot when I was younger. Now I get killed. All these jiu-jitsu guys would fuck me up. But boxers used to rule the streets back in the day. Not now.
Not wrestlers.
Take you to the ground.
Well,
and
in
you're
Canada,
done.
there wasn't, there's not a lot of wrestling. Probably wrestling in the U.S. There wasn't a ton of wrestling, so you didn't have to worry too much about them, right? There was boxers that kill. And then, on the street, too, there's this, bite and everything. And I did, from working the bar, I had some basic chokeholds, like way back before UFC was really popular, just because you had to submit guys in the bars. All the old doormen would show me, like, reasonable force. You can't knock people out when you have a problem. You have to, like, bend arms and choke. And so I used some of those, like, way before UFC was really, not the first ones, like the first Gracies, just because I wouldn't have been born. But those were, in Canada, we used to rent them every day from the video store. But we used to go to, like, there's only like 2 video stores that carried them. They were on the bottom shelf. And like, oh, there's a new one, UFC 4. Right, and we'd get it, but
yeah, I remember. So you will do that.
I will do that one, and actually, we just submitted. We did a 10-page short about it that we submitted for this fund. That you get, like, I think it's $20,000 in cash, and then like $50,000 in kind, with like camera gear and grips and stuff to shoot it. And it was an interesting moment. It was a sit down I had where I went out one night in Kelowna, where I'm from, and my dad, like I said, used to own a strip club called Cheetahs. And all the local MC used to hang out there. When I say MC, is motorcycle club, for those that don't watch Sons of Anarchy. They used to hang out there, were friends with my dad, and I grew up around a lot of them. They were friends of my dad's, friends of mine. I saw some of them that went from one of them being a manager to us, that then became a full patch member, and still friends with some of them. And we went out to another bar, and my buddy was hitting on a girl, and some of the members, they weren't full members, they were prospects and hang-arounds, right? I can identify them right away, but the average person doesn't know what the colors and stuff they're wearing. I did. But my buddy doesn't see, they come up and they say, hey, quit talking to this chick or whatever, and he was with me, and like I said, I used to fight a lot. I was Western Canadian boxing champ when I was younger, so he got a little lippy too. He was like, what's that? You guys want to suck my dick? Right? And they were so dumbfounded that this little scrawny, they were like, what? So they like come after, and I saw it happening, and I went, because I knew he didn't identify like what they were wearing. So I went over to try to stop, and I put my hand like on a wall in front of the one guy that was charging after my buddy, and he smacked out of the way, and then I put it again, then he just smacked me with the bottle, and I still have the scar on my forehead there. I got like 22 stitches. And I think he thought I was just going to drop after that, but I'd been in 1 or 2 bare knuckle matches, so I came right on, I knocked him out cold, right? And but then a big brawl started, and luckily I was with some of my other buddies that were some pretty tough killers too, they were some of the first guys training some MMA. David Lee, who trains Rory McDonald and Michael Hill, and he's from my hometown, so some of these guys were training with him. And I mean, we did all right, and we walked out, and we didn't realize how hazy it got, because they started fighting the bouncers after, because they were embarrassed that we knocked 2 of them out. And then I used to do fitness modeling back in the day. I know I can't tell now. I'm a skinny fat dad
Great
now.
line, though.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds essentially, but it just, and the context I'm saying, the context I'm saying is that when I went back and I had this big gouge on my head and blood all over my face, and my dad flipped out. He's like, this fucking ruined your career. And my dad's like, because who my dad was friends with, he was starting to make calls. Who the fuck hit my son? I'm a fucking, like, and then sure enough, within 10 minutes, the guy that I knocked out was a Hells Angels son. So then they both connected, because they knew each other. Were like, yeah. And then my dad's like, worst news. He's like, you knocked out a full patch member's son. He's like, we have to have a sit down tomorrow. I'm like, oh, excellent. That's awesome. Right. So going to get stitches that night, and then we go, and we're at the Pier Marina pub, which isn't there anymore, but we're sitting down, and it's such a bizarre scenario. So, and this is what the 10 pages is written about. Of course, all fictional characters and everything now. And I wouldn't play myself. I'd get a really good actor because it's a younger thing. Yeah, I do docs. I can't.
Thor, the Thor guy. There you go.
He needs to be a bit younger, but he'd be great. I actually like Taylor Kitsch because he's from Kelowna. Right?
Yeah,
the Kelowna boy.
yeah.
I'd love. I mean, that's who I'd ideally like to. If not, if he's too old for the character, I'd love him to play one of the bikers. But so we go to this thing, and my dad was friends with another guy that was going to be a prospect, and he knew the president of the Hells Angels at the time in town, and he owned the pub, and he was like going to make a decision on what happened. So 10 feet away or 12 feet away are the guys I got into a fight with, and they got all their bruises and black, and I've got all the cuts and bottles all over this, and the mediator's going back and forth. So he sits down and says, like, "What's your story?" So I was like,
So
well,
it's like a tribunal?
yeah, they have a sit down because the way
Okay.
that world works is they tax you, right? Unofficial tax. They lay a levy. If I was in trouble, my dad was going to get taxed. If I was in the wrong,
Interesting.
we were going to get taxed.
So it's organized. Very
Yeah,
organized.
oh, very, very. The sit downs are very, but it also happened because my dad had a relationship, right? If we were just outsiders, they found it probably wouldn't be so smooth, right? But because we had friends and everybody, they're like, nah, let's see. And they knew I didn't drink and I didn't do stuff like that, so they knew if Adam was involved, you know, and I wasn't involved in any smuggling or dealing, so there would be no business elements involved. It would just be strictly a sit down chat. So we went, and then they're like, "Adam, what's your side?" And I was like, "Well, my buddy was hitting on a girl. They didn't like it. They went in there. I tried to go tell them who my dad was because my dad was sitting at a table with all the guys who, like, he got introduced to them. He didn't know them really well, but he knew the dad, and he got introduced. And so we go. So he's going, and then he leaves us, and he goes back there, and he's like, and then he comes back. He's like, they're saying a different story. They're saying you didn't respect the patch, and that you, sucker punched them and everything else, and that they didn't hit you with a bottle. And I was like, saw the scratches down my face, and I said to him, like, you've been in some street fight before. I was like, either these guys have really long nails, or this is glass smashed on my face, because that's not a fist. Fist breaks bones, makes black eyes, doesn't put scratches along your face and stitches like this. He's like, true, that looks like a glass. And I was like, they came after my buddy for a girl. I tried to talk it out before anything happened. It happened so fast. Booze was involved. I got hit with a bottle, and then it was just survival mode, right? And they're like, well, if that's the truth, then, you know, there's nothing wrong with you defending yourself. And your friends jumped. They're like, which one of your friends jumped in? I'm like, I'm not a rat. I'm not saying who jumped in to help me. They saw me get hit with a bottle. They saw 2 or 3 guys come in after I knocked the one guy out. They jumped in. We reacted to what happened. And I mean, like you've seen some of that. I mean, the town kind of supports them because they don't want other gangs coming in, right? They prefer the MC, and
Sounds a lot like the
it's
Gambino
so
family.
it's so much like Sons of Anarchy. If you watch, like when Sons of
It's an
Anarchy came
episode.
out, my friends were like, "Dude, that's your life." It's so much similar.
Is it very accurate?
Very accurate. Well, Sonny Barger, who started the Hells Angels, makes cameos in that show all the time.
Okay.
He's the guy that talks with the voice box and the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's not accurate in Sons of
Oh, of
Anarchy?
course. There's stuff they have to make for movies. Like, I mean, no one's having shootouts on their bike like this. Like, because if you just tilt it a little bit too much of this, you're eating, like. But of course, they have to make that stuff like, yeah, like you're back, and then the guy shooting from the car. Like, you'd be able to hit a guy on a bike pretty easy or knock him off that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, just drive up, duck, and run him off the road, right? But of course,
Will they intimidate police? Will they do that? Local police?
there's I mean, there's so
Is there
much business
unwritten-
stuff behind, but I mean, even they say the number one gang in the world is the police, because you can call in SWAT and you can call, like, you know, and it doesn't, tough to fight that argument, you know, in court, being like, well, the full patch member got shot, he was self-defending against the cops. Like, really? Don't think so, right? Like, the cops are gonna win. So they're the number. But I mean, I'm still friends with a lot of them. It's not, I wouldn't want to be a patch member, but I can see I mean, there is some cool to put on that vest. Like, they've given me a blank vest that had the patches ripped off, like, because we're going to use it as a prop and stuff. Like, because some of them are going to be consultants on it, because I want it to be really, coming from the doc world, I want dramatic and fake names and fake scenarios, other than some real moments that happen with me, like the sit down, because it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Because, like, even finished the sit down
Yeah,
story.
what
like,
happened? What happened?
When it was done, they kept going back and forth, and couldn't get the story straight, right? And then finally, the mediator comes back and he goes, I know what I'm going to do. I know the owner of the nightclub really well. I'm just going to ask him for the videotape. I was like, perfect. And then I remember these words, and it's like, even though you know your story, you start being like, fuck is, and I'm sure you guys do, like, you'll tell a story for years, and then you'll have even a friend tell a story when you're there, and you're like, fuck, he remembers it differently than I do, right? Like, you're like, I better think back. Like, so he goes, Adam, he's like, if you're lying, and I know you're leaving for New York tomorrow, you and your dad are gonna get taxed. And
How much would the tax be?
I don't know. They probably issue something, and then we'd have to come up, and you could possibly negotiate.
It's like a
or maybe
one-off
not.
payment or a regular payment?
It'd be probably pretty good.
Okay.
I'm guessing
like a
nowhere
chunk.
less than 10 grand,
Okay.
but probably could have been more.
That's wild. I had no idea.
So they literally, then he said, if you do, then you can go to the 3rd Street chapter, and you could deal punishment there, because then I was going to get a whooping too. Right?
Really? In addition or separately?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Taxing and a whooping, because I'm lying, right? If you're lying, it's
Okay.
not good.
How
right?
bad of a whooping? I mean, like,
Not, maybe a broken nose and some
okay. Few guys punching you for
yeah,
a minute.
for a little bit. And I definitely didn't want. He's like, or you can fly home and deal with punishment, which I would have done.
Right.
Because I don't
Fly
want to go
home?
to. Well, because the 3rd Street chapter is in New York, right? I don't know anybody there.
Oh, Jesus.
So I'd rather take a beating from guys I know than.
Right.
Okay.
So I was like, I'll take the beating in Kelowna. But then, like, when he asked, I knew my story was straight because I didn't drink that night. But I started to think, I'm like, fuck, did I remember everything right? Is there anything I fabricated? Then they checked the tape, came back, I was all good.
Did the other guys get in trouble?
They got in trouble. I don't know to what extent. I heard they were supposed to get some beatings too, but I mean, with the one guy's dad being a full patch member, I doubt it.
Did you ever see him again or any?
Yeah, I've seen them around. I don't know if they remember me though.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Is there any downside for having friends like that? Because I know a lot of guys back in the neighborhood would always talk up their connections with the mob and all that stuff, but then sometimes they were a little close and there was some downside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends with them. Like, I mean, of course. I mean, because I actually, for a while, when I owned the nightclub, when my dad died and I took over, I mean, I was on police things. Like, my buddy that's a cop, I'd get him to scan and be like, he said, for a while, you were listed on there. Not as like, not that I'm like dealing, but just I was a known friend, right?
Okay.
Because I owned a strip club, right, which was insinuated, like, in BC, most of the stripping agencies are owned by certain members of the MC. So that's how my dad built relationships with him, right? Is he'd book girls. We'd get new girls from Vancouver every week that would come in on a contract, and all legit business, but he would deal with them, and that's how we got to become friends with them there. And so I can't remember where I was going with that, but
I don't even know where you're going with that actually. Oh yeah, if it was bad to be associated.
yeah. So then, but then when my dad passed away, and now I was ahead of that, then then I was on like police stuff. So and just owning a strip club was not good either, right? Like, I was naive coming back from New York, and strip clubs are very different in Canada than they are in the United States, or I don't even know if they have them here. But
They do somewhere.
There's
But
like private men's clubs here, more so. I think
That-
like memberships and stuff. I haven't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the scene that well.
yeah, I don't know. Well, in Canada, like, literally, Kelowna especially was really weird because they were just like nightclubs with dancers that would get fully naked. Like, guys and girls would come in there. It'd be 50-50 guys. Girls never had an issue with coming to Cheetahs. It was the place to go before you went to the nightclubs, because the nightclubs don't get busy till 11 o'clock, right? So from 7 till 11, we used to be really busy, right? And then it changed when so many other places, and then we'd only be busy from like 8 till 11. But, everyone went to the clubs to dance around midnight, 1 o'clock. But the girls didn't mind, because we don't do like the private shows. There's no touching. So there's no grinding on you. So if you came with your girlfriend, you could legitimately like watch a show. And some of the girls put on wicked shows. Like, they do fire shows, and they do elaborate pole work where they can like hold their hands behind their head and put themselves straight out, on the bar and stuff like that. Or they would dress up like Xena, warrior princess, and look like her and do some pretty cool stuff up there. So like, even the girls would be like, fuck, I love this girl, puts on an awesome show, right? And then they'd just be drinking around the bars, and we weren't big on doing the private shows and getting girls, because that's what really even the times, for a bachelor party, we'll go to a strip club in the States. Like, I hate getting hustled with, like, how are you doing? Sitting on your lap, want a private show, And only so often you'd be like, no. And then, like, some of them are just so aggressive. You're like, fine, here's $30. Can you leave me alone? Like, I just want to watch the girl on stage. I'm not used to the...
Right.
So
that was your business.
Yeah, our business was very different. Like, even some of the part owners of Hedonism came in there one time, and it was funny because they're like, do you pay all the girls to hang out here? Like, why is there so many hot girls? It's like, I'm like, it's Kelowna, it's weird. I don't know. That's just like the place to go.
Kelowna's a great town, man. I love Kelowna.
It's great to
beautiful, too.
visit.
Yeah.
Living there.
Yeah, I haven't spent much time there.
There's no work there. And
Right.
Beautiful scenery-wise.
Yeah,
I want to
gorgeous.
retire there. I mean, it's like Lake Como. I don't know if you know Italy, but it's
Yeah, I've never been to Lake Como, but I know of it.
we have like 58 wineries in the Okanagan Valley. There's 4 ski hills, only 45-minute drive or an hour drive. It's got beautiful, clean, freshwater lakes. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. But there's no work there. Like, that's hence why we went to Alberta. Like, my wife just got a great job. I got a great job. The money is in Alberta, where a lot of people are actually working in Alberta and go like a month and come home for a week, because Kelowna, the cost of living, you pay to be there. Like, an entry-level 45-year-old house is $350,000, $400,000.
Okay. Has there been a movie that's done like the biker gangs justice? I mean, I know Sons of Anarchy is really big in the States, but
I don't think a feature film. I haven't seen one. They either get too cheesy or too cliche. Because that's a big thing I wanted to write in the script. And I saw it when I'd get some writers and they would try to, I'd be like, okay, I want it to be very real, right? Super real. And we came up with, you can't use the HA logo or that's heavily, even the font of the writing is owned by them. You can't even use the same font.
Wow.
So we came up with aces and eights, the dead man's hand. Right, a lot of the members have that tattooed on their thing. Funny enough, sorry, what'd you ask me there?
I think it was making the movie. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I haven't seen anything ethical. But what I was saying or real is that when I get writers, I'm like, I want it really real. Like I want it to be like feel like City of God or some of those movies, like really real. Where like when there's a death scene or something, you're like you feel it. You're not just like, oh, it's another shoot 'em up action movie, right?
Okay.
I find too many of them go that way. They try to make them too fictional and too crazy and too dirty, and they're like dirty broke bikers. And I'm like, no, these guys get into this to have money and power. And in Kelowna's community, they're treated like rock stars. They are the new age guys are young, well built. They have tattoos. They look kind of like MMA fighters, and they wear vests. Like they look to me like a cross between kind of a hip hop artist, because a lot of them wear a lot of bling, and then like a punk rocker, right, where they've got like the tats and they're like the new school guys, like the girls in our town, like a lot of them love them. Like fuck, they're so hot and they got that bad boy image and they're clean cut and they got faux hawks and stuff. They're not these dirty, grubby like old school guys were, right? But a lot of the new age is not like that.
You got to make that film, man.
Yeah,
I need to see that.
And it would show, and trust me, that's why we've submitted for this, and I'm hoping, and then with the short we can go. But it's funny because even with docs, when I try to get into the feature world, like I get no respect. Right?
They don't want to hear it.
They're just like, you don't know anything about features, fuck off.
Yeah, well, Graham Hancock has the same thing. He goes from, I guess, more doc stuff, which is Fingerprints of the Gods, and when he tries to write fiction, like they don't even want to know.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if he sold 5 million, 10 million copies of the one genre. They're not even hearing it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of strange. I want to get your perspective on this, and I don't want to talk all episode about it, but you're really close to cannabis laws, cannabis culture globally. Yeah. You did this first film in the U.S. and everything.
Unfortunately, yes, I can. Some may consider me kind of the pot guy.
Yeah, I mean, you've done a lot of research about it, and we had Rick Doblin in here. I don't know if you know who that is. He's the founder of MAPS, which is they've been around for like 20 years, but it's the interdisciplinary study of psychedelic studies, and they fund a lot of MDMA research for veterans. And he's done research for many, many years, but he was saying how he can't do any cannabis research because the federal government, the FDA, is actually open-minded to MDMA, especially when it's used for veterans and police officers. I mean, at the end of the day, he's a salesman. He's like, Brian, take a veteran and police officer. How can you not try to help them with PTSD? We'll take the most the most easy to talk about drug, MDMA, and we'll do a study. But he's like, cannabis, I can't get any kind of federal mandate for it because it's a federal Class A drug. He's like, I can't do it. We can do the synthetic kind. He's like, I don't want to use that, even though Washington and Colorado, it's legal and all these other issues. But
very, very hard to get financing for it.
Yeah.
Very hard.
So where are we going? I mean, you have a unique perspective of seeing everything. Where are we going globally and in America in a nutshell, do you think?
It's getting hard to maintain arguments of some of these because other countries that haven't had as many restrictions to study it, their studies are starting to come out, right? And then that's a great thing about the internet. It's tough to hold that shit back now, right?
Yeah.
It was easy back in the 80s. Like, how many printed copies are you going to get in mail and who's going to actually read them and stuff like that? So, I don't know. Every time you think that it looks like you're starting to change awareness and consciousness, all it takes is for, some big fuck-ups in Colorado and Washington, then doors could close everywhere.
Okay.
Right? And something, a legitimate concern is that marketing getting into it like booze and pushing things too hard, and because some of the saps or the glues and hashes they can make are really fucking potent, right? And if you're an amateur trying, I mean, it'll give you a really, really negative experience
for the inhalers and stuff.
Yeah, okay. Well, not for burning because if you make
like cookies and stuff.
Yeah, edibles can fuck you because then when you eat it, it becomes 11-hydroxy and it becomes much more psychoactive, and you can OD by eating it, and then it won't kill you, but you'll be really fucked up for 3 or 4 days, and you'll want to not do it again, right? So
I like those cops on. I think I'm dead.
No, I'm dead. I'm dead. The lady's like, "Calm down, sir. You're still talking to me." No, but I'm dying.
That's on the web, so you can check it out. So cops stole someone's marijuana camera, and then they cooked some brownies and then called 911.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough for me to. I'm sorry because I hate to not, but it's tough for me to answer on this because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about in the film.
Okay.
But access to information and the internet is really even the playing field. It's tough to trick people, and I think for a lot of these arguments, especially the hemp argument, why that's still prohibited and stuff, that is just fucking ridiculous.
And that's like a historical throwback from the
and
US.
it's just a stupid old law, but it shows you one thing, that when a law is in place, it is fucking hard to change, right? So that's something that should be considered with all new drug, policies and stuff that they might try. You better really look at those policies and make sure that you're doing things right the first time, because they're fucking hard to change afterwards, and big business gets involved, and that's a legitimate concern. That's one of the good arguments I hear is like, you don't want it to be like the Super Bowl advertising booze the way they can with like, you'd like to just, I wish they could get rid of all that. Like in Canada with cigarettes, they've done a great job. You cannot advertise cigarettes at all. Okay. You can't even have them showing behind the counter. They have to be covered.
You can't sponsor either.
Right? Yeah, you can't. It's good. They've nailed it, and they've reduced smoking and new use like really well. I think it's by like 30%, right? Like, so it's interesting to see where it's going, and that's why we're riding this wave and getting all this information from all these people, because the studies are fascinating, because that's why the doctors, some of the ones we got are the rare ones that got funding, because they were trying to get funding to prove the negatives and actually discovered some positives. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, Professor Nutt, I mean, his psilocybin research is stuff that I don't know if it could have been done in the States, as quickly as
I'm pretty sure it can't. I'm pretty sure that a lot of the stuff is being done, like there's a great study done in Spain, another stuff on cannabis and stuff, a lot of stuff being done in Israel right now. And then Canada, the interesting thing is Canada has federally accepted medicinal marijuana across the board. So if you have your license there from Health Canada, you can travel anywhere in Canada. You can bring it on the plane with you, you can go, you can't smoke on the plane with you, obviously.
One of the things you see, I think you mentioned earlier, is that it's such a cash crop. I mean, from your movie, The Union, I don't know if it's still the case, but it's worth more than gold in its weight.
Well, and that was an interesting, because that at the time, because people were like, "Fuck, gold's $1,400 an ounce," and I was like, at the time it was $289. Okay, like when we did the film, but no, but again, like, and who knows? We just talked to a Harvard economist about that, and it's tough to know what it's worth, because who knows it, because all the numbers are based on the artificial inflated price from prohibition.
Right. Okay.
Right. So who knows if it was regulated and controlled and was available, that's going to definitely bring prices down and stuff like that.
But there's people that don't want it to be legalized because they're making so much money. So there's
absolutely.
Lots of conflict
Actually,
of
in
interest.
California, when the bill went through, you would have thought, how did California not put that through? Right. But a lot of the growers in the Emerald Triangle and shit, they voted it down, because they're like, fuck, we're making such a killing right now. Right. And and the federal government is so overwhelmed and everything. There's fucking weed and all over the United States now, so it's tough. So a lot of them are like, fuck, they've got their communities hooked up where no one's going to rat on them, and so you'll get that where a lot of drug dealers will vote, which is an interesting. We talked about this in the Union. It's interesting, bedfellows, when you have law enforcement and drug dealers both voting on the same thing together, right? Because their financial institutions both make the drug dealers. They're already the kind of people that are going to take the risk, right? So they don't care. They want risk, reward. They'd actually. I know we did the Union. They're like, we'd like to see penalties get stiffer, and you're like, no, but that means lengthier sentence for you. They're like, but I ain't gonna get caught, baby. I'm gonna keep growing.
Prices go up.
Like Howard Marks is kind of saying, right? He did it the opposite way as a smuggler. He's like, I was always trying to get things legalized, even though I was a smuggler, right? And then we're like, well, isn't that kind of an oxymoron? He's like, oh, I was just a rock star, baby. I was just gonna go till if they legalize it, good. Then I have to retire, obviously, right? But
yeah. And like most guys, he's like, I thought it was going to be 5 years.
Yeah,
right.
He's like, when he started smoking at Oxford, I think is where he was a student. He was just like, this is going to be legal, because it was legal when he started, and he's like, this isn't going to last. And here we are.
Out of all your research that you've done, if you had to be a lawyer on the side against it, what's the most compelling evidence you've found?
The best thing is the marketing of it, because you can, like, some of these cannabis shops are getting some of these butters and stuff that are just ridiculous, right? And if you're a young kid and you get in there and you get into this, it'll fucking fuck you up. It'll make you not feel good. I mean, it's not like...
So it's that synthetic part that's actually not scheduled.
No, it's not. Like, butters and stuff are real. But it just, when you heat THC, you increase the T9 and you make the psychoactive effects in body stone much more intense.
And when it gets processed through your liver, then it converts to
and it gets you, like, you get really fucking body stoned and, like, major... It'll be... Well, again, it's like... Mice have been injected, like we talked in the Union, with just obscene amounts that probably should have killed a dog, but they don't even kill the mice, right? So the toxicity of cannabis, or the LD50 as is measured in science, which you need to OD, is off the charts for cannabis. It's like below, you'll OD of, like you could drink more coffee and die directly than you could from cannabis. The toxicity is so low.
Yeah,
But
LD50 is the dose that would kill 50 out of 100 mice.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
like your normal dose to get high versus LD50. I guess with marijuana, it's probably hundreds of times.
It's ridiculous.
With
That's why we have
heroin, it
that
might
funny
be
part that
5.
everybody laughs at in the union, is we have that one doctor says, like, I think the toxic amount of tetrahydrocannabinol is you'd have to smoke 20,000 joints in 20 minutes. He's like, I challenge anybody to do that. Right? Like, 'cause
You're watching your movies too much.
I know it off by heart. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's that would be the thing, is that, you know, but again,
Controlling it somehow.
controlling it
Yeah.
is the way to protect you. Like when people are like, what about the kids? What about the kids? That's the dumbest argument. Just like government policy is not going to teach your kids the right moral message. It's not going to, you know, choose their sex life for them. It's not gonna, that's what your parenting skills are supposed to be. So you want to keep your kids off drugs, whatever that drug is, whether it's marijuana, booze, whatever, you have to be a good fucking parent, okay? That's what's going to help them. Not government policy. Just like government's not going to help them get a job. It's not going to help them do any of that either. That's what you have to be as a parent. You have to teach good work skills. You have to teach good skills so that they don't have addiction problems. And that would be the thing. If I was arguing the other side, is I'd really like to see good legislation to make sure that you have safeguards in place and that these places aren't going buck wild and that the things are getting tested so you know what's in it. Because something that never really comes up is that, like, even whenever you read the study, like this study showed this from marijuana, this study showed this, positive or negative, is that none of them are studying like what's being sprayed on the plants, right? Like now you're finally starting to get labs where like the medical people are, the real serious medical people are like, I want my shit tested. I don't want any avid in there. I don't want any harmful fertilizers or chemicals that I'm smoking. Like just like with food, right? People are like GMOs and we're like, I don't want that shit. I want someone that's growing it, that cares about what they're growing. But because of prohibition, you're seeing this in BC a lot, where the CBDs and sativas weren't even grown, because sativas grow tall and produce a light flower. Everybody was growing indicas because the majority of stuff in BC is grown indoor. So they want an indica that produces a heavy flower, that has a heavy, you know, THC content, again, because of, you know, the prohibition. That's what they were selling to the United States. Like, we want the heavy THC, we want the skunks, we want the kushes, we want those. So those are going in there. Whereas now that the medical licenses are coming, a lot of the guys that when we interviewed for the union that were doing illegally, now a lot of guys are legit and they've got licenses for Health Canada and they're going for patients, right? They're like, screwed doing it illegal, right? I'll just get a license from Canada, I can grow. And now they're getting into much more of the sativa because they have medical patients they're growing for. So they're like, no fertilizers, no overgrowers, no, and we're growing much more sativas, which the cannabidiol or the CBD seems to be where all the medical benefits are. And
Okay.
you know,
so you're getting better product now.
Better product. You can get you're putting the science into it. The regulatory model starts coming in and you start testing. Then you send it to labs and they can give you an exact amount. How much THC, how much is this? So that would be the main concern, is making sure that those proper safeguards are in place. And if you're going to be a registered establishment that is going to sell cannabinoid products or cannabis products, that they're testing, you know, where they are and where they're coming from. And that's where the decriminalized model can get sketchy. Because it's like, okay, it's good. We're not giving young people criminal records for some of the things, the same things that global leaders had done, and they just won the lottery and didn't get caught, right? That, you know, we're going to, at least you're doing that, but then you're still not dealing with where it's coming from, right? And I know people don't like it, like, but I kind of like how Canada has, like, for us with booze, right? In BC, Alberta's got private, but BC's all government-run liquor stores.
Same in Ontario too, yeah.
Right, so they control where it is, so you can't sell it all hours of the night. It's, you know, they're all closed by 10. For a while they weren't open on Sundays, but now they are. Stuff like that. So that would be the main thing, is just making sure that it can't go crazy, right?
Okay.
But that's what we have right now, right? Right now it's unregulated and it is crazy, right?
Right.
Putting the regulation into it. That's why I think legalize is such a bad word. Regulating is the better word, right? Okay. And then I know you get the argument, people are like, oh, you want big business and pharma getting into it. And it was like, I think it'd be, the best way to be look at it like wine, right? Being able to do wineries, like compare everything. There's actually supposed to be a bill being introduced into California that they're going to just make everything like wines. People are like, what about this? How does a winery do it? We're doing the same way. Right. Okay. We're being regulated by the same fashions that control the liquor that we're doing for wine. Well, what about amounts and what about places to serve it? Wineries can have little bistros where you can sample and stuff too, or do the same thing. So you know how the grape is grown, how the thing is grown, how the process is done. Just compare it to wineries, right? Okay. What about agricultural grants? Same as wineries, right? What are you doing for taxes? Same as wineries. We're doing it just like that.
So will there be a third movie?
No.
Come on. Never say
What if they
never.
legalize it? Then you have to do a movie on the.
We really don't want to do another drug documentary. Like who knows though? I mean, we said we wouldn't do a second one, and
What would it be called?
oh fuck! I don't even want to think. We have to finish this one first, which is gonna be, already they're stressed because they're like, there's a lot of stress I've seen with Brett and myself. Like it's still very stressful. We're doing all the right elements, and that's something like when I sit down and, Brett puts so much pressure on himself, and I'm always just like, Brett, at the end of the day, we're doing the best we can. My family sunk in personal money again. We're not doing this to get rich. We're doing this to make a great film. That's our goal. We're not trying to make a film to change policy. We're not trying to get a film. Like, that's where people are like, oh, with these changes, like, does this affect you? And you need to get it out before this election. That's not our goal. Our goal is to make a great film that when you come out of that movie, you're like, fuck, I learned some things, and it was fun. I just enjoyed it. I learned some shit. I thought it was fun. Movies are meant to be fun and make your mind think, right? Great docs, anyway. A shitty movie, when you come out of it, you're like, some movies you forget you even watch. People are like, oh, you seen that one? You're like, it's this, oh yeah, I kind of remember that movie.
Right.
Bad movie.
So you're stressed because you want it to be great, and then there's always budget issues too because it needs to be finished.
Yeah, and it needs to be finished, and then you're dealing. And now, the first one, we didn't have timelines like we do on this one. Like, now we have interim financing and loans that have to be repaid at certain dates and everything. So it's like we can't go 4 months over for editing. It's like, then, then that runs us into problems of repaying our investors. So it's like, and that was something I even brought up when we came here. But it's like, fuck, that's such a tight editing schedule. And I was like, listen, we do have a few months leeway, right? Like, if it doesn't release on 4/20, it's not the end of the world. We can release a month or two later, right? But really can't go much later than 2 months. Like, it has to be done by then. But then that's the problem is we have to send a finished master tape to the distributor. I think it's 60 days or 90 days before. So they have to they can get their marketing, make all the presses of the DVDs and get the VOD things written up and.
So there is a schedule.
There's a schedule.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's tough, and we just want to make a great film. Ultimately, we're hoping to just that everybody enjoys it like the last one. We hope we can hit an even bigger audience because we already have a current following, and then hopefully, people support it financially too, so that pay my family back and pay everybody
get
back.
The investors. I'm going to finish on a very London real question. You might have heard us ask this before, but I'm going to ask you. Yeah. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Adam Scorgie and give him a bit of advice, what would you tell that kid?
Ooh, fuck, that's a good one. If I could say when I was 20, I'd say it's kind of a cliche saying that I've said for a while. Is that I'd be like, I'd say to my young self, I'd be like, Scorgie, I was like, that plan that you told me, you can tell God that same plan and he'll laugh because life doesn't work out as planned. So whatever the plan you have for yourself that you think is going to work out in this way, it's not. You're going to become a different person than you thought. You're going to learn different things you are, and you're going to go through a journey. So enjoy the journey. Don't focus on the destination.
Okay. That's strong advice. What's the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I'd ever received? Have to be from both my fathers give me good advice. And my stepdad is really that one where I just talked about where he said like how he tried to raise me, that he's like, if I measured you on the title you held or the position or the money you made, then we failed, which really always gets me to check in that, life is fragile, everything can always be taken away. So just try to be a good person. Don't be a fucking cunt. Try to be a good person. And I mean, it's
that's a t-shirt.
Yeah, I learned a lot from, and sorry for carrying on a bit more, but from doing the Ray Mancini story.
Okay, right. Yeah, this is The Good Son.
The Good Son, because there's a perfect example of somebody that did everything right, and it was taken away from doing his job too well. And for those of you that don't know about Ray Boom Boom Mancini, I'm going to drop my movie here.
Go.
But Ray Boom Boom Mancini was a monster lightweight fighter in the 80s, right? Sugar Ray Leonard announced his retirement. Ray was he was a super exciting fighter because he never stopped coming forward. He was on the front cover of Sports Illustrated right when lightweights were taking over the sport versus the heavyweights because they threw more punches, they were action-packed. He made a promise to his dad at 12 years old. Now, at 12, I was watching Gummy Bears and shit on TV. I was not making promises.
Gummy Bears or Gumby?
No, Gummy Bears.
Gummy Bears?
Bouncing here and there and everywhere. And gummy berry juice, it was a big thing.
Jeez.
I watched Transformers and shit too.
Okay,
but-
that's all right. We didn't get that.
Gummy
no.
bears
G.I.
was
Joe.
awesome.
Gummy bears are awesome. They used to fight the trolls and shit all the time.
They
get
drink
that
some
in
gummy bear
SoCal.
juice.
Yeah, and they get
like,
all strong and balanced, and they were always trying to steal the formula for gummy berry juice.
Yes.
I'm surprised they haven't done a feature
Now
of
I
that
feel
yet.
Brought
Any-
back. I hadn't thought of that in a long time.
Anyway, Ray, so he makes this promise at 12 because his dad was a title contender but got drafted into the Second World War, took shrapnel, tried to come back. He was never the same, got damaged his eye, and then so he was unjustly deserved the right for a title shot. So Ray at 12 used to go to the strand and say, Dad, I'm going to win the world title for you. His dad's like, it's cute, son, it's cute. 12, like all through high school, everything, I'm going to be a pro fighter, I'm going to win a title for my dad. And we're like, that's cute, kid. He does. At 21, he wins the title and he gives it to his dad. After 40 years, it's finally where it belongs, he says. Then in his third title defense, he fights this Korean fighter, Dooku Kim, who in the 14th round, he kills Dooku Kim from head. Well, Dooku, we put him into a coma. Dooku Kim got up, he got hit with this monster shot, gets up, collapses, goes into a coma, dies 3 or 4 days later. And he had a son named Ji-won, but his fiance was 3 months pregnant with a boy. So Ray got into boxing for righteous reasons, to win a world title for his dad and become a great fighter. And then he tragically takes the life of a father in doing so from an all-out war that was, if it be but for the ending of that fight, it's amazing. They go at it. No one knew who Dooku Kim was, and he came to fight, and they went to war. And Ray takes the life of a father, and then the judge, or the referee, he commits suicide a year later. Not because of the fight, he had other issues, but another tragic compounded. Dooku Kim's mother commits suicide because all this stuff gets exposed about her. She commits suicide. And then in the film, Ray meets the son and the fiance for the very first time after 30 years to finally put the story at rest. So you see in a story like Ray, like here's a 12-year-old that was focused to win a world title for his dad. Then he tragically takes the life of a father, this whole father and son connection, to have that all taken away. And all he did, wasn't scandalous with women, he wasn't boozing or doing drugs, didn't drink and drive. He did his job too well. He took the life of a fighter in the ring. And boxing was forever changed because of his fight. They no longer had 15-round fights
Went
after
to
Ray's
12.
fight.
Okay.
Went to 12.
Wow. Is that a solution? Just
No,
whatever
which is it's actually because more damage is usually taken in the first rounds when you're fresh and you can hit harder, right? Like Ray actually was really, he said that. But like everything, it's like politics. It was a reaction that boxing made right away to show everyone that we're like, oh, it's such a brutal sport that this was. Right. And for Ray, it was different too because there's been other people that have died in the ring and it didn't carry as much as Ray. But Ray was the guy that everybody loved. He was the guy next door. He was this young town, small town guy that fought for his town and for his dad. And then it felt like he like cheated on you. Like, oh, there is a flaw in him. He was this golden boy. He was everything that was good about the sport. And within 6 months, he was the dark horse that nobody wanted to touch. Endorsements, deals dropped, and the boxing world turned its back on him.
Because of the death.
Because of the death. Because he'd, accidentally, and then still his kids went through stuff. I mean, and that is a great life lesson that he did nothing wrong. He did his job too well. He came out and fought like a champion. Like, went to this 14-round battle war with this other guy that was not willing to give up. And Dooku says, there's notes in his diary that this is my chance. I will die in the ring before I will let him beat me. I will knock out Mansi. Because he knew this is his one shot. Like, Dooku was very unheard of. He was an Asian champion. Out of the graces of the WCB, he was a #1 contender, but wasn't really, no one in North America knew who he was, but he fought like a hero that day.
When's this coming out, this film? Or is
it's out right now in the U.S.
It is,
It's
okay.
theatrical run. It's available on iTunes. It's not available in the U.K. right now. I was trying to get a meeting with Dog Wolf while I was here to see if they'd be interested in carrying it. Somebody else, because I know a lot of people in the U.K., a lot of people that follow them, like, oh, when's the Good Son coming out? When's the Good Son coming out? But, I mean, if that isn't a life lesson that everything can be taken away like that from doing it right, like that's why for me, I can't stand it when anyone that has success isn't super humble. It fucking drives me crazy when they have an attitude because
Let's go to L.A.
I know, because you meet someone like Ray that and he's the nicest man now, and like I mean, he made my father-in-law, he made him cry when they met. Like he's weird. He made a whole bunch of people cry. Because he's just so, like, you just feel like you hug him and know he's so genuine and he's so appreciative and he signs every autograph and everyone wants to take a picture. And I mean, when we did the screening in my hometown in Kelowna for The Good Son, all these, like, local people came and there was a lot of really young girls that came. That they only came because it was the only thing going on. And They wanted to support my film. They didn't really know anything about boxing. They sure as hell didn't know who Ray was. And afterwards, their makeup's all run because they were crying. They're like, "Oh my God, that story! Like, I can't believe in Ray's such a." Then they're all taking pictures. Like, for the night, it was back to him being like, shit. Like, everyone was there. Like, we need to get a picture with Ray. Even my wife was always kind of like, "Fuck your film, fucking this and that." She's so sick of me talking about my movies and shit. She that is the coolest guy of all the guys. I love him. Like, she's like doing pictures, like punching pictures with Ray and everything. And he's just so. And Lauren's dad, he was a pro athlete too. He was in the Hall of Fame in the CFL.
Okay.
CFL, you would know CFL.
Canadian Football League.
Yeah, now I know.
He was drafted by the Jets originally. Okay. And then actually in the time in the 70s, he made more playing Canada than he did to play in the NFL. It shows you how the NFL grew. But he started crying. He was like, he is a true champion for the man he is outside of the ring, not for what he accomplished in. He just, and for, I'm being redundant, but great lesson to always be humble because it can be.
Okay, I want to see it. So what, if there's a distributor listening in the UK, you should
it
contact
will
you?
get to the UK. There's no way it can't. It's a great piece of work. Very proud that I got to be a part of it. Right now, I mean, the LA Times and Variety and everything, there was a few of them that wrote about giving it an Oscar buzz. It's done we've done all the things to submit. And it's 80% on Rotten Tomatoes right now for a documentary. That's fucking crazy. Yeah, that's from like some of the biggest reviewers.
Big for any movie.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's true.
So,
all right, last advice question is to the 20-year-old listening that wants to grow up and be like Adam someday. What advice do you give him or her? Because a lot of people want to produce documentaries or films, or they want to be in the business. Maybe for the wrong reasons.
Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. For that 20-year-old, the thing I would say is that make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Especially if you want to do documentaries, don't do documentaries because you want to be rich and famous, because that's not going to work. Do it because you love it. Like, I mean, and I'll be totally honest. I've been honest with this crew from the beginning. Is that when I first went to go do the Union, I was acting, then I was in front of the camera. So I was like, oh, I'll do this documentary quickly and it'll get me some acclaim. We'll do some film festivals, maybe win some awards, and that'll help my acting career. Oh, no. That didn't work anyway. It became this huge monster, and we were like 4 years in, and it became something else. So for the young guy getting in is that, you are going to have to work incredibly, whether it's feature films, whether it's documentaries. It's a tough fucking business. Every business is tough. It's not that it's any tougher than other ones, but it might be more mentally draining than certain ones. You're going to take lumps. It's not going to come on your first film. And even if it does, you'll usually struggle from then. Like some of the people that won an Oscar right out of the gate, if you look at 90% of them, they never really did like too much. Again, enjoy that journey and learn as you go, and be humble in your success and humble in your defeat, because you're going to hit a lot of brick walls and you're going to come back. But really enjoy the relationships you make through the thing, and enjoy just the process. Don't judge yourself on winning awards and stuff like that as your success. Because it's like that saying that's been said on Joe's podcast lots, right? It's like, awards for art are silly anyway. But if you're going to give me one, I will happily accept it. So don't judge yourself on those. Judge yourself on just how proud you are of the journey you took to get there from start to finish, what you went through to accomplish and get that done, and pursue that. And know the biggest advice I can give to young filmmakers is treat it like a business too. Like when you come in, I meet with every young filmmaker I can. When they reach out to me like, oh, I just have some questions. If I'm in town, I'll meet for coffee. I'll try to give them some advice. Because I like to think that, that saying where if you to get what you want, you have to give it away. Right? So if you want success, you help others to succeed. If you want more love in your life, you have to show more love, and you'll receive it in return, right? So with I'd like to think that, I wish someone would have been there to help me, and there wouldn't have been the egos that don't want to help young filmmakers in case I'll help them all. If I can, if I'm in town, I'm available. If I'm not, I'll answer a phone call or an email or a tweet if I can. But make sure you're business prepared, right? Like I meet young guys, like, I got this great idea, and it's like this, and it's, what do you think? And I'm like, great, sounds cool. Flush it out on paper, right? And some of them are like, no, I'm not good at paperwork. I'm like, you better fucking get used to paperwork, because there's a lot in the film world, especially if you're coming through the Canadian program where you're doing tax credits. And nobody hates paperwork more than me. Nobody. But I have to do a ton of that shit. I fucking hate it. But you have to do it. Have it prepared. Have it like if
like
it's
a budget or a production schedule.
Yeah, like okay, if it's a documentary, have a pitch package with pictures, visuals, because it's a visual world. But have the do some research on other similar docs, what their budgets were, what you can do. Be prepared so that if you get an opportunity to meet a great producer or distributor, someone that might be interested, that there isn't a thing they can throw at you that you don't have covered. right? Because then people are like, this guy knows what he's talking about. He does have a good idea, but he's professional. So many people think that this industry, because it's the film industry, that they just have to have the idea. Ideas doesn't fucking mean anything. I got this great movie idea. Send me a script, right? Till you have a script, it's not real. An idea here is nothing till it's here, right? So if it's a feature film, script. If it's a documentary, just like if you're going to go, you guys are finance guys, if you're going to go get a loan, if I just come in and be like, I got this great business, you're like, great, get me a proposal, business outline, 3-year plan, what you need, what's the drawdown, what's the return on investment. Same thing. Business, the film business is a business. They're going to want to see that. What's the concept? What's the idea? What's the synopsis? What's the outline? What's the overall picture? How do you see this film? How do you see it being released? How do you see this? What's comparables? Using comparables are great because that's what, in a visual world, it'd be like, it's like City of God mixed with Sons of Anarchy, right? Got it. I got what you're going for. Now put it into a script, right? So for docs, I was going to bring it today and leave it maybe but we have this pitch package that we get done on the Apple book, right? That we did for the Culture High. And Brett is so good at these, and he writes the idea and he puts pictures and he incorporates our color and our logo throughout the whole thing. So when people get it when we put it down, people are like, whoa, this guy's professional. Yeah. They know what they're doing. Like when we were at Sundance, they were just on the table and I had a whole bunch of distributors over for NFL. We were just watching football. And they thought they were coffee table books. They were just picking them up to like read them. And they're like, oh, this is a pitch for a movie? Fuck, this is great. Who's representing this? Or we're like, oh, it's sold already. Like they were all American buyers and I already sold the US. But have that in place. That is, I heard this recently. Lady Gaga was on Howard Stern's show, and he was kind of giving her a hard time. And she said, I meet all these young artists that are like, oh, I got like, they'll chat and they'll be like, oh, I got this and this. She'll be like, great, let me hear your demo. And they're like, oh, I'm still kind of working on it. And she's like, when I was younger, I always had it. If I went to a show, I fucking brought my demos and they were done and they were ready. So someone's like, oh no, I'm kind of working on it, I got a few more months. No, then right away, who wants to invest in that? But if you're there and you bump into the right person, you're like, actually, I got it right here. I got my single, I got my first thing, I got my first success, boom, boom, boom. Then people are like, oh wow, this person came to play ball. So that would be my biggest, if you're a young film, do your homework, have it lined up. It is a business, put that business proposal together. So if that opportunity presents itself, you're ready and you'll be able to take the next step. And even if it doesn't work out there, at least that person will take your call for something because they know you're professional. Yeah. Because you came with everything there.
Yeah, and I watched your Kickstarter video, and it's just really professionally made, from your voiceover to everything. And people notice those little things, like you said, the logos, the color schemes match. Like everyone knows in the back of their mind that's production value, and it shows you're serious, and it's their money.
No, and that's and trust me, me and Brett talked about the video for months, right? We put that together. And I spent the deal with them was I spent $4,000 with them, but they made me a deal because they're my buddies. Were like, if we hit our goal, pay us. If not, right? But that video was $4,000. Like we went, it had footage from when we went to Ottawa and we did that, and then the graphic work, and then getting that JFK speech and all those things. Like it's not. Yeah. It's not easy. And then and that's what Brett was really trying to get something different. And you don't even really see anything with pot in there other than the leaf at the end, right? That's what we're trying to say. It's bigger. We're going to a deeper consciousness here. And what JFK says, and it's funny because I showed that to one, and even a guy that's like a JFK fanatic and collected all this stuff and he's bought all this free rights stuff. He's like, what speech is this? Because he didn't even recognize it, right?
Yeah, I never heard it.
He was like, fuck. Rumors are that speech is one of the key components that led to his demise. Because if you really listen to what he's saying, and he's talking about, to not question authority in the government and what's going on, he's like, and he's like that great bit at the end, he's like, he talks about the biggest mistake is to not accept or correct it, right? I'm paraphrasing, but it's a great thing saying that, you have to look at what you've done, and it's so tough, especially in politics, to go back on something and then correct yourself, right? Yeah. Oops, I was wrong.
There you go. How do people get a hold of you, get in touch with you? You got a couple Twitter handles?
Yeah, the main one, you can go to just my Twitter, which is Adam Scorgie, like score with a big G, because that's how my name is pronounced. So ADAMSCOR, big G. Then the Culture High, obviously, you can just go to that, just the Culture High, at the Culture High, or Culture High, just www.theculturehigh.com. Or you can go to either the Union Facebook page or the Culture High Facebook page. I manage all of those. I don't have an assistant. It is me that responds to every single thing on there. So
And you're quite responsive on Twitter. So
I try. I do my
cool.
best. I do my best.
And
My
the-
wife is really hating it, and who knows, after the next film, I might have to get someone to help me.
She hates you being on social media.
Oh, I'm on there so much.
If someone can do one thing that will help the culture high, would that be like pre-order a copy on Amazon in March or April? Or if there's one thing they can do that would help you the most, what is that?
That would be the thing, is that when we go to launch, like, because it depends, the distributor's figuring out the marketing plan now and what we're going to do on iTunes or whatever else, but when it comes would be to support it there, because they're the business guys. And this is actually my good friend Todd McCormick said this, is like, he knows, and I hope people listening here, like, money is not why I get into this. But when I'm trying to drive numbers up, what it allows me to do is to create other great films where if the distributors make a lot of money, I can lean on them again to do my next project, right? So yes, I'm asking you to buy it, not doing so. When it launches and we do a day and date release on iTunes and stuff like that, and a theatrical release, come to the local theater and screen. I will try to shake everybody's hand. If you taking a picture with me or me signing an autograph is cool, I'm not trying to sound like, because I obviously think unless I'm signing your DVD, I don't think my signature's worth shit. At least if you got the DVD, you have the DVD. But come and support. Pay. You guys already were great on Kickstarter, and you show and you help get the film into production. But now help it go further, because the day and date release and the theatrical release is controlled by the audience. The more they support, if it keeps selling it, we'll do 100 screens all across. We'll go all across Canada and the United States. If they keep pre-buying tickets, my distributor will keep footing the bill to be like, wow, we sold 5, we're there, right? And then I will come to every screening, and we'll try to get other cool people that are involved in the film to come to each screening, depending on where they are locationally. And, maybe a few celebrities if they're not too expensive to bring, and it'll be like a, because kind of like what's happened with music is downloads have dropped, but then you tour more, right? So maybe you can get certain cool people to show up that were in the film for an inflated ticket price, and you get to meet them afterwards and take pictures and everything else. So we're looking at all that. So the way is, when it releases, is come support it. Download it on iTunes, or come to a local theater if it's by you, support the film, and then you can show that people still want to see docs as well as Avengers.
Good answer. Colin, did I miss anything? Did I forget anything?
No, I think it's great, man.
Colin, I feel bad. You have some really interesting shit. I took over the whole conversation here, man. I told you I
no,
don't shut up, man.
That's why you're here.
There's already been a podcast on mine, so you can tune in later.
We'll talk more after.
Because your shit seems fascinating, and then
You'll hear all about it afterwards.
No,
Anyways,
good.
that was awesome. That was pretty long. Yeah. We got through a lot of stuff.
I told you, when you said an hour, what did we go for? What are we at here?
Well, almost 2, I think.
Yeah, I knew it would be. I don't shut up, so my wife reminds me
It's
of that
all good.
constantly.
It's our best guest. I hate guests that don't talk. So,
good.
thanks so much for coming. I'm so glad you could be here. It would have been a crime if you didn't come by. So,
Are you kidding me, guys? Thank you guys very much for reaching out. I know we were trying to make things happen for a long time, so thank you very much. I'm honored to be able to have podcasts like you interested in sitting down with me. So thank you guys very much.
Our audience is going to love this one, I'm sure.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
Cool. Thank you. It's interesting. You were talking about people supporting your product afterwards, and I was just thinking about advertisers. For me, it's just kind of funny. I mean, we don't do Kickstarter or anything like that, but I get guys like Bulletproof and X-Brain that put up with the show, and ultimately, if people want to see production values go up, which we're trying, or to start Silicon Reel. Yeah, I mean, for me, the vote of confidence for that is at least just check their sites out. And, go to Bulletproof, go to X-Brain, take a look. That's honestly the one thing you can do that just helps us, because it keeps the lights on. And
you do that through your website when you order, because if it doesn't click through yours, like if I just Google Bulletproof, right? But if I go through London Reel.
Yeah, it helps, or a Twitter link, or the code London Reel now on X-Brain as well to get 15% off. That shows them. So all the advertisers really need is just to know that the people are kind of coming from there. You don't even have to necessarily buy anything, but if they see the traffic, then they're like, okay, this is a good thing. So
I'll tell you right now, if we get on with Dog Wolf, and if any people that are associated, you guys, I'm telling you, with the following we already have in the UK, they're silly not to take, because we had a distribution deal with the Union and with Lace Entertainment, but they fucked it up, and then they said the warehouse burnt down and they lost all the DVDs, so it's not available here.
Okay.
If they took both products, and I'm not looking for a huge deal over here, anything in the UK would be great. I don't want to sound cocky, but I honestly think it would probably be 2 of their best-selling docs they've ever carried, even though they carry a lot of great ones. They carry Restrepo, and they got The House I Live In and stuff like that. But
Restrepo's good.
yeah, there's an interesting following for Restrepo is an amazing documentary, and I can't believe the camera guys went there, because you'd never fucking get me going there. Amazing.
It looks like a Hollywood movie, especially when that guy's dying. I thought I was watching drama.
But anyway,
so Dog Wolf, they should get.
So
in touch
no,
with
but I
you.
was saying I will be a sponsor for this podcast, if provided you guys are cool with that. If this is something you'd be interested in, we'd have the Cult Tribe be a sponsor.
Wow. Okay. Awesome. Love to, man. Either way, that's cool, man. Great.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, guys, for having me on.
Cool, man. If you're listening on iTunes, we're on YouTube. Got a whole new cinematic performance where you can see all of Adam's head without the screen split.
In HD.
In HD as well, yeah. So check that out. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. If you want to help us out, just send us an email at info@londonreal.tv. That's it. It's about the journey. That's our tagline. Adam quoted that.
Well, that's your tagline?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be, I didn't say that just because I read your website. Really? That's your...
Yeah,
that's
you're
cool.
a plant. Is what you
Yeah.
are. Yeah, that's it. But best to you guys. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for listening, guys.
Yes, that's great.
All right, guys. Take care.
This week on London Real, we have hostile environment filmmaker Stuart Kershaw.
I was a single male with no dependents. I'm that guy who's cheap to insure to send to hostile locations, and I suppose the ocean is hostile, certainly where cameras are involved.
He set the world record for rowing the Indian Ocean in 57 days.
You know, it was life and death out there, absolutely no doubt about it. You know, our water maker failed after a week. We were hand pumping from an emergency desalinator. The boat we discovered had some holes in it, in the ballast tanks, which made us at risk of capsize. I don't know how much more of this we can take.
On Sunday, London Real presents Stuart Kershaw, extreme filmmaker.
I don't take credit for us breaking that world record.